We're talking today with Philip Saladin of Allendale, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, start us off with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
My name is Philip Saladin. I was born in Bayonne, New Jersey, January 1982.
Okay, did you grow up there, or did you move around?
Yes, I grew up, I guess, up to after high school in Bayonne, but I traveled back and forth, had family throughout the state.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your family doing for a living when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, it was, I remember my mom being home and my dad working all the time, and pretty much one of those families, just parents working, and
What kind of jobs did your dad have?
factory. Mom
Okay.
and my mom worked. She eventually worked at a factory too, but a lot of times my mom at home. And then we had a huge family though. I have 4 or 5 brothers, 2 sisters.
All right. Okay. And when did you finish high school?
2001.
Okay. All right. And then what did you do when you got out of high school?
I was playing football, athlete, so I went to college. I gave that a shot. I lasted all but a year, and then
Okay. What school did you go to?
Western Connecticut State University.
Okay. All right. Now, how did you learn about 9/11, or where were you when that happened?
That's a good one. I remember that day like right now. I was in college, driving to class. I had a morning class. I'm driving, and the news is already going. Something's happening. I'm like, okay, so I stop at the chow hall, get breakfast, and as I sit down, I look up. You know, the image that everybody remembers. Bam, second plane crashing, and I was just like, okay, something like something's going on. Like you get that feeling, you just know. And then I go to class. 5 minutes into class, teachers like everybody leave.
Okay.
So I go back, and I'm in Connecticut. My whole family's in New Jersey. So, and of course, cell phone reception is out. I can't get in touch with nobody. And so me and a friend of mine was like, okay, we're gonna drive home this weekend. As you imagine, the bridge, everything is just military all over. Everything is shut down, and it's like, okay, we're gonna get home this weekend. But eventually, they were letting traffic through the bridge, and and I finally got home. But crazy, one of the most imprinted images on my arm is like, besides the airplane crashing, is when I was driving over the George Washington Bridge, and I grew up there. I seen that image. Or brother has a house across the street, like I could see the Twin Towers from his porch.
Yeah.
Coming across the bridge, you just see dust, and it's just like I wanted it to not be real. I'm like, no, this is like one of those situations, and then weeks go by, a couple days go by, whatever, and then it starts sinking in. You're like, oh wow, this is real, and yeah.
All right. Now, I'm going to ask a side question. Your last name is Saladin,
Yes.
which is of Arabic origin.
Correct, yes.
Is that part of your background, or is it a black Muslim thing? Or?
I think it's. I've been trying to look into it a little more. My dad said my grandfather is from Egypt originally.
Okay.
But my mom and dad and all my family that I know are all from Dominican Republic.
Okay.
So I guess my grandfather moved to Dominican Republic, met my grandmother, but information my grandfather was like limited to none. My grandmother passed away, so it's like word of mouth, and it's not easy stuff to find. So, and then that was another thing. Like when I went to Iraq, that was a pretty cool thing. Everybody saw my last name, and that I got to find some good information out there about that. So it was pretty sweet and interesting. And then even as a kid growing up, like when I was doing history at that time, grade school, they were still telling me. I see my last name in a book. I'm like, oh, that's so cool, And then that kind of got my little bug going on that one.
Okay, but you didn't really identify as Middle Eastern per se.
No,
Yeah.
I've never, never. It's just only thing in common is just the last name.
Right. Okay. All right. Now, you don't join the Army till sometime afterwards.
Yes.
So you go to college for a year, and that does not work out particularly well. So what do you do next?
Well, I always had the bug for the military. My brother was in the military during the initial, the Kuwait, the invasion. He was there. He did a small stint. He did it more for college purposes. And then, but I just always had it. And then I tried to join when I was in college, but I was still like unsure what I was gonna do, so I never fully committed. And then I left college. I became a car salesman out of everything.
Okay.
And I'm a car salesman. It's about a year or so in, maybe a little bit more. And you know, it's like I was bored. It wasn't what I saw myself doing. It's not what I wanted to do. And I say it's funny. It's like a coincidence, whatever it was. A friend of mine thought it was a joke. He had bumped into a recruiter in the street. He's like, yeah, I got a friend who wants to join the Army. He sends a recruiter to my job. I guess he didn't think the recruiter would show up. Sure enough, I'm like selling cars, and this guy's like, hey, are you Phil? And I'm like, yeah. And I thought he was going to buy a car. So I'm talking to him. Next thing I know, I'm like, sure. I'm taking the test. I'm at MEPS doing some paperwork, and then I got a date, and I was like, hey, I'm joining the infantry.
All right.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Now, as you were doing the testing and the paperwork and stuff, were they asking you what kind of specialization you wanted or training or?
There was I really like, I didn't know much about the Army. I don't want to say I was like super into it. I knew about different jobs. But I was like, I wanted to fight. Like,
Okay.
I was just like, okay, that's what I want to be. Like, I sat down, I'm like sitting in the recruiter's office, and this guy walks by, and he has this badge on his chest, and it's like a combat infantryman badge. Yeah. And I was just like, what is that? They was like, oh, that's a combat infantryman badge you get if you're an infantry. And I was like, well, that's what I want to do. So, and they had this giant book of jobs. Like, I took the test, and they were like, these are all your jobs. I was like, is that one on there? They're like, yeah. I was like, I want that. And it was like, you sure? And he was kind of trying to talk me out of it. He was like, there's so many other jobs. And it's funny, he even recommended me. He's like, I got a friend in the Air Force that I could get you into the Air Force, and you'll probably like the Air Force more. And I was just like, do they have infantry? He was like, no. I was like, I don't want to do it. So that was my mindset. Like, and I guess it must have been like, you know, high school I played football and wrestling. I was just always that, just had that, I guess, that mentality. And, you know, and I went, and I initially joined the National Guard. And I'm and literally like 3 days into basic training, I was like, I want to go active duty. I was like, this is...
Okay. So initially when you sign up for the National Guard.
Yes.
And one of the things they do with the Guardsmen is they then send them off for Army basic training.
Yes.
But then as a Guardsman, after that you would normally go home.
Correct.
Okay. Now, so when do you report for basic training?
So it was September. I reported to basic training. It was it's a little process. They flew me in, you know, they flew me out to Georgia. In Georgia, you got a whole bunch of brand new guys, don't know nothing. They throw you in a school bus. You're on a bus for a couple hours, and then you know, you're like, you know, pulling into a base, and then, hey, you're...
So did they fly you to Atlanta?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess depending where you're from, but everybody, the central final airport is Atlanta.
Yeah.
And then Atlanta, they just got the buses lined up, and it's weird. It's like an airport within its own, because you come in, you land, you do all the stuff, but that's where it ends. As soon as you come out to check-in, it's like their own little area. You get your bags, and it's straight to the buses, and it's like you're separated from everybody. And then, you know, at this time, you're new, so you don't know. Like, the military still hasn't kicked in, but in your head it has. You're like, well, you know, and then so you're there. You meet people. You're on a bus, and then you're just driving, and it's like tinted out bus. So.
Okay. Now, what base are they taking you to?
Fort Benning, Georgia. We was going to Fort Benning, good old Sand Hill. And you get there. We first get to the reception. I think it was like 150. No, that was my unit in basic. Whatever they call the reception in Benning. So we're there. You're there for like a week, processing, getting your clothes, you know, everything, and just sort of like waiting to get I guess the next class to open. Then all of a sudden, bam, your drill sergeant's gone.
All right. Now, what kinds of people were going in when you did?
Oh, it was a mix. When I tell you, like, I thought growing up in New Jersey in that area and New York that I knew a wide variety of people. Oh no. I got there and it was just like, man, like, you meet, if you think of a personality, you'll meet that person there. It's every walks of life. Like, it's interesting too, like at that time, about 2005, 6, I'm meeting people, they're like, oh, you're the first colored person I've ever seen. You know, and it's interesting, you know, you don't think that in your head. You're like, you know, you like, by this time, you're like, oh yeah, everybody's, you know, you pass it, but it was like, yeah, that was like, and it wasn't like in a malicious way. It was like I've never seen somebody like, hey, what's up? And then, but you discover so much stuff. Like, that's where I first found out about the Confederate flag. Me growing up from New Jersey, I see Confederate flag. I'm like, oh, that has to be something racist, you know? So, like, I see this kid, he got this giant full back tattoo of a Confederate flag, and I'm looking at him like, great, this is who I got a bunk next to. And the guy turns around, and we're just staring at each other. And he's like, I'm not racist. And I was just like, are you reading my mind? I'm like, just say it in my head. And he's like, you're looking at my tattoo. He's like, and I was like, okay. And then we started talking. We ended up becoming like best friends. We talked. He explained to me everything, and I was like, that's so awesome. Like, broke down to me how, like, no, it's like, you know, like, we have our small little community. Like, this is what we believe in. This is what it's about. And I was like, this stuff is awesome. And then you start meeting more people like that, and then, you know. And then you also meet some special people. You're like, wow. Like, I know why you're here. But even those people, like, when you talk to them, you're like, yeah. But then when you're out there and doing stuff, you're like, all right, yeah. Like we're all here for at the end of the day, we're all here doing the same thing. Like, and it's weird how it takes a little couple weeks, but once you're in, how that brings you, like, you know, somebody, you probably just got into a fist fight 2 days ago. Next thing you know, you're like sleeping in a muddy hole with him. Like, come on, dude, get closer, keep me warm.
All right. Now, so you do your battery of tests, you're kind of sitting around. Do you spend, now, in that first week when you're processing, are they keeping you busy with one thing or another?
Yes and no. It's almost like busy work. Like, the physical training was minimal. Like, it wasn't like a scheduled, like, it was like minimal. I think they purposely feed you, like, they got the lunch is like this great spread, you know, you got your ice cream, snacks, and everybody's in there eating pizza, and I think they do it on purpose. Like, okay, here, enjoy this, because, you know, you're not gonna have this for a long time. So, and me, I knew a little bit from, you know, just family and people I knew, so I was like, I'm just gonna, you know, keep it easy. I was already a little heavier on the heavy side, so I was like, I'm gonna try to. So we're doing that, and it's a lot of class. Like, you know, it's like, okay, come to this orientation. We're gonna. It's a lot of, like, we're gonna read about this weapon system. We're gonna teach you this. We're gonna teach you, like, the super most basic of the basic things that is not gonna get your head chewed off when you first show up. Like, that's it. And then a lot of it was like, okay, clean. A lot of cleaning, sitting around. Like, if you were sitting around, be reading. Like, just doing something productive was the thing. Like, if we didn't have nothing scheduled, do something productive, because then they'll find something to do, and that was, you know, what you wanted to avoid.
All right. Now, when you actually start the training cycle, now what are you doing?
Okay, now it's almost like a crawl, walk, run phase. You start, like, basics. Like, you get to your room. This is your canteen. This is your canteen cup. This is your gear. It goes on your gear like this. This is how you wear it. So pretty much the first week, I would say, is like the standards. You're getting shown the standards. This is how you have your closet. This is how you have your bed made. This is how we expect everything to be. So it's like a consistent drilling of this. And then after that first week, they kind of slack off a little bit. Now you're, like, a lot more responsible for your stuff. Like, okay, like, your shoes, or how come your shoes, you know, then you start feeling the problems. Okay, like, you guys are not looking, you know, you're not keeping the standard. We start doing the physical correctness and all that. And then, but at the same time, you're learning, you know, it's like, okay, here's this rifle, take it apart and put it back together as fast as you can. You know, some people do it in 30 seconds, some people do it in 10 minutes, you know, but, and it's like, okay, you couldn't do it in 10 minutes, you're going to start knocking out push-ups. Okay, now you're like, I don't want to do push-ups again. Let me get this together faster.
Okay. So you mentioned physical correction. They're not hitting you.
No,
but you're doing
physical
push-ups
fitness, I would say.
Yes.
Yeah. But it, you know, in the moment, you're like, oh, why am I doing this? But then, like, now I look back, I'm like, it worked. It definitely worked, because, you know, you don't want to do push-ups all day.
All right. Now, I guess, how hard did they ride you?
At first, discipline-wise, they rode you. Like, because, you know, you came in there, you had this street mentality, you know, so, man, it was like, you know, head and eyes forward, don't talk unless you're spoken to. Like, I don't want to hear a peep. You're going to sit there for 3 hours and clean your weapon, or you're going to learn this, or you're going to learn how to read a map. It was like discipline. Like, it was like, when they say they break you down to build you back up into a soldier, they strip you from any ego you have. Everything is gone. Like you think you're good at something, or you know everything. No. Like, it gets taken from you. But then you just like then you start learning everything. It's like, you know, you thought you knew how to walk a certain way. You know, you come in there like, well, I'm being taught how to walk. You don't think that, but that's how it is. Like, no, 30 inches, hands like this, you know. And at first you're like, I'm never gonna do all this. But then you start seeing little by little, it just, you know, it starts clicking. But definitely like the discipline is the first 3 weeks. It's there. Like, you have a constant drill sergeant with you at all times. You're never left alone. There's a task always. If even at nighttime, you know, 2 people up, it's always something. There's always a task and purpose. And then every phase they lighten up, but they always leave it hanging over you that they can bring you back to. They call it red phase. It was like, we can go back to red phase really fast. And you know.
Now, how long was the basic training itself?
When I went, it was 13 weeks and either 13 or 15 weeks. I want to say 13 weeks and like 5 days or 3 days,
Yeah.
like some weird thing like that.
Yeah. Okay. Now, how large was the unit that you actually trained with?
It was in basics a little different from the standard units,
Yeah,
especially at Benning, because like your typical soldier goes basic one place and then specialty training somewhere else.
Yes,
in
yes.
Benning, you stay all there for the whole time.
Right.
So we had, you know, usually a company, you have like 3 platoons. These companies were like, you know, 4, 5, 6. They were oversized, but it was probably Fox. We had 4 platoons. So
About how big was a platoon?
say we had what, solicit. We were saying basic anywhere from 40 between 40 and 50 starting, but then as basic goes on, I think we graduated with like maybe 20 something people. Like we lost like probably 50% of our class.
Yeah. That is in fact where I was kind of heading with that line of questioning. You get a lot of people who've come in and enlisted, but then an awful lot drop out. Now,
Yes.
now what kinds of things knocked them out?
It's a lot of stuff is like different kind. Like one is physical, like some people get like, you know, stress fractures, breaking ankles, and they'll get rolled back. So they'll just either get depending how far along we're. So like let's say we were in week 9, instead of them getting thrown into week 1 of the next group, they'll just hold them, recoup them, and then they'll be able to start like week 8 or 9 with the next group.
Right.
But if it's a discipline problem, you're going to week 0. Like you're going week 0. No matter we had a guy week before graduation. Guess where he went? Week 0, because he went out on pass and got in trouble. So, but then you have people that ran away, and that's a whole nother amazing thing in itself. You're like, why? You know, we had a few AWOLs, and I'd say probably like 3 or 4 of them. And they would make examples of the AWOLs. It was like, because they would get caught, you know, because like you got somebody in the middle of Savannah, Georgia, who's from North Dakota or something. Like, oh, I'm going to run away and go somewhere, and you're this private who everybody probably within 200 miles could spot you like that's a private running away. And then you'll see them 2 days later in the back of an MP car getting drove in. And it's, but you know, some of them got out, some of them got recycled.
Okay. Now, did some of them just quit?
Yes. You had people that just refused. Like, no. You know, and it's like, you know, besides from physically grabbing them and dragging out the room, which, you know, the drill sergeants can't do, they were just like, no, this is not for me, I'm not doing it. And then, you know, somebody would come, they would take them, and then we wouldn't see them again. So I don't know if recycled, they got sent away or what it was, but we had like 2 people that, and they call them, I guess, like failure to adapt, and they just ran them out. But
Right. Okay. Now, how long do you think it took you to adapt? I mean, was there a point when you kind of understood while you were still in basic what was going on and just rolled with it, or?
Yeah, I would say I thought it was almost like a 2-step process for me, because like when I first got there, I thought like I knew it. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna shut up, and I'm just gonna do what I'm told, and I'll survive. And I was like, that'll make me through it. But you know, they just had this thing of picking out the people who were just trying to like play the shadows and like not get in trouble but not do too much, and that's what I was just trying to do. And I had a drill sergeant that, you know, I guess he just wanted to encourage me. And he, called me out, and then he put me in a leadership position. And I never, I grew up in the city. I never held a weapon. And I'm like, okay, like I can't embarrass myself right now. I'm like, so I don't know. So, and I failed. There was we were doing a almost like a base operation, and he knew it. I think he did it on purpose because he knew that I kind of been playing it back and I was doing just enough. So he put me in this position, and I completely dropped the ball. Like I didn't have my sectors of fire correct. But he set me up. I to this day I say he set me up. But it opened my eyes, and I was just like, okay. And then he made me understand like the picture. Like, okay, like yeah, you may know what you're doing, and that's it. But he showed me how everything just came together. Then I was just like, okay. Then that kind of started that wheel rolling. I was just like, click, and then it started clicking and clicking. And I was like, and I started looking at everything from like more of a leadership position, and like more than just being the individual person. When I saw it as a group, and I'm like, okay, it's not just, I'm not graduating, like the class needs to graduate. And things went a lot easier. Things went a lot easier, but I tell you what, it was a process, and I'm kind of glad I went through it, because I had it was like a huge ego check for me, because I was like, I know this, I'm tough, whatever. Yeah. It was just like, no, you're not, you don't know nothing. Like, here you go.
Okay. All right. So you get through the end of this. Now, do you stay at Benning for infantry training, or where do you go?
Yeah, so usually what they do is when you're done with I think it's like the first 3 or 4 weeks were considered 6 weeks were considered the basic training, and then we would go, so instead of us getting shipped off somewhere else, our drill sergeant was like, hey, we're going to celebrate your graduation from basic training, And they were just like, okay, turn around. Hey, guess what? You're in AIT. So we stayed in the same exact place.
Okay, so it's advanced individual training.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then now that's when it got fun. Like the physical, and I don't want to say it got relaxed. It's more, I think we were just already conditioned, and we were like, it felt easier to us. So the PT was easy. Like we were to the point where like, we were on Sundays was considered our downtime. We were doing PT on Sundays for ourselves. So we were pretty good, and then we started doing all like the infantry tactics, learning how to do ambushes, learning how to react to an ambush, platoon attack, squad attack, the infantry tactics, all our battle drills, and that was the stuff where I was like, okay, this is why I joined. Like we get like. We don't just have the basic M4. We get into put the little lasers on and the optics and throw the grenades and play with claymores, and it's like, and I'm like, okay, and as the ball was rolling, like December came along, and in Benning you get a Christmas break, so it was like, and you forced, so I was like, so we got to go home. It wasn't bad, but we got to go home for it was like 2 weeks, but when we came back, it was just horrible, because this one was like, you're in the middle, you just got snapped. So it's not like you're starting at week 0, but you're not week 0. So that was an interesting one.
Yeah, so you get to relax for a little bit and then have to snap back to attention essentially and go back. Okay. Now, of course, you're doing this now at the end of 2006 and going into 2007. Correct. So we've been in Iraq now for several years.
Yes.
To what extent was the training you received geared toward the Middle East?
Oh, it was... I want to say, I don't want to say primary or like that was a sole objective, but it was probably say 85% of the training, because we still did like out in the woods, like besides urban training, we did other like land nav and stuff like that, but there was a heavy emphasis on urban combat pretty much, because Iraq was kicking off, and that was a huge, and I think at that time was the no, was it? No, that was like right before that was a little bit before the surge, but the numbers in base, it was mad. Like the drill sergeant, I remember the drill sergeant saying a lot, like the numbers are a lot higher, and they're like the summers when it's the highest, and like the winter numbers were matching the summer. Like they just had recruits flowing through there, so it was a little faster pace, but we got to do a lot. It's like, and I liked it because I like that urban stuff, and like we ended up knocking out like a week of drilling ceremony. Instead of doing that, we got to do some urban tactics, which is awesome. I'm like, who'd rather not go clear a building than march,
Okay. So they teach you sort of physically how to operate in an urban setting. Do they
Yes.
give you any kind of cultural training or orientation?
No, not in basic training. I don't know if now they do that, considering how long we've been there. It would definitely be a smart thing to do. But when I was there, it wasn't but when you get to your individual unit, they did that a little more. But at basic, it was more of even in tactic wise, it was like the overall. Like they never got into it. Like they just maybe step A and B is the furthest they got. Like they never got into too deep into anything.
Okay. So these are really still kind of combat problems for you.
Yes.
How to physically fight in these different kinds
Yes,
of environments
yes.
and what to do with the weapons and
Mentally
maneuvers.
train them how to enter a room and raise your weapon without thinking about it. Like that's just second nature. As like that's the stuff they're drilling in you. Like memory, muscle memory. Learn to keep your weapon on safe until you do this. Like that's the stuff. The basics is pretty much.
Okay. Now, were your instructors people who had been to Iraq or Afghanistan?
Yes, I had one instructor. Great guy. I would say, I had 3 instructors. 2 of them were like huge impacts. I still, and then one of them he was actually, I'm pretty sure you probably heard of it. It was in Afghanistan, Battle of Anaconda, I think it was. Pretty much, he was pretty much part of the spearhead force with the 10th Mountain Division, and he was, just the training and tactics and the stuff he was telling us was just like, I loved it. And then of course he would give us the stories too from his time, and just the knowledge, and and he would tell us like, when I went through basic, it was nothing like this, and then he had that experience, and I don't know when he went through basic, but he was. He was a sergeant first class at that time, so he had to have over, 10, 12 years in the military. So, and I'm like, man, this guy knows it. He's telling me like, stuff's changing, like, and then hearing that from him, and like just seeing that like they're applying it to us. He's like, because this is how we used to do it, but this worked for us when we was in Afghanistan. This is what's being taught into doctrine, and then it was good because like, I started seeing stuff like that flowing in, like as it went on, and more of the drill sergeants were from combat deployments. You started seeing that, which was good because like when I get to units, I had stuff that some people were just like, oh, okay, and that helps you a lot as a private.
All right. Now, when do you actually finish then the AIT?
I graduated. It was December. I think it's February. Yes, because I was in basic for my birthday.
All right. Okay.
So February.
So February of 07. All right. Now, do you get assigned to a unit from there?
I went actually back home to the Guard because they couldn't do none of my paperwork while I was still in. I had to report to my unit in New Jersey, and then I get to my unit in New Jersey. I was there maybe 3 months total, but like the first day I get there, I'm like, I want to go active. Like, who do I have to talk to? Where's the paperwork? What do I got to do?
Yeah.
I did everything I did in just short of 3 months. I had my orders. And I got stationed to go to Germany. Actually, I got to pick, so I picked Germany.
All right. Why did you pick Germany?
I thought, and I had some great places, but I was like, it's probably my only chance to go to Germany. Like my only other overseas choice was Korea. So I was like either Korea, Germany, but I was like, I kind of want to go to Germany first.
Okay.
So that's what made my choice.
All right. Now, what unit do you join?
I joined the 1st Armored Division, 2-6 Infantry.
Okay, so 2nd Battalion, 6th Infantry Regiment.
2nd Battalion, 6th Infantry Regiment, 1st Armored Division at Baumholder, Germany.
All right. And how do they get you there?
Flew, I felt like I was going to basic all over again. They actually flew me to South Carolina, and I had to sit at the basic training reception, but I wasn't a basic training soldier, so it was weird because I was still technically like this brand new private, and I'm walking around a basic training place, and like all the drill sergeants are looking at me, but I have a unit patch on it. They're like, what do you do? Like, they think I'm like faking or something, like ready to start drilling down them, and I like pull my orders out. I'm like, no, I'm just here waiting for my flight. And it's crazy when they see that you're not a training and you're actually a soldier, the attitude changed. The drill sergeant was like, and he actually just came from Baumholder, this one drill sergeant. He was like, oh, you're going to Baumholder? I know this place and that and that. So I was like, sweet, tension, relax. And then from Fort Jackson, they flew me to Germany. So I got to fly to Germany. I flew into I can't remember. It wasn't Frankfurt. I can't remember the base. It was one of the larger ones.
But it was a military base. It
Yes,
wasn't a
like
civilian airport.
well, we flew into a civilian airport,
Okay.
into Frankfurt.
That's quite possible, yeah.
Yeah, and then, of course, they got the little military section.
Mm-hmm.
We got on our buses, and we went to this reception. I don't even remember where the reception office was. You know, I just first time flying that far. I was in another world. But we get there, and then we get our orders to our individual stations, because I knew I was going to Germany, and I knew I was going to Baumholder, but that's about the furthest you knew.
Yeah.
Get your orders. It's like, okay, then you're like, oh, I'm going to Baumholder, Germany. Then you get split up like that. You get there on the bus, and the bus drives, stops at each base, calls out the list of names. Okay, you get off here, you get off here. I get to my, in Germany, get to my base, get off. Of course, it's a 4-day weekend. They're like, hey, reception's not open. This is your unit. Somebody will meet you over the weekend. If not, Monday morning, show up for PT. And I'm just like, oh, yeah.
Did they give you a place to sleep?
Yeah, they set me up. They brought me to my barracks and all that. And when I got there, they had a NCO assigned for me, you know, and he was like, hey, you know, you came in the 4 days, pretty much nothing we could do. It's just like, this is the base. He showed me around. We took a tour. Completely, like, you know, different world. I was what, 20, 23 probably, I think I was, you know, and I'm just like, man, like, I'm in Germany. And I just got this 20-minute tour of this random base, and see you Tuesday, and it's Friday. And I'm, okay.
So how did you spend your time that weekend?
I bumped into another new guy. We happened to they put two new guys in the same room. Me and him were sharing a room, and we were just like, let's go walk around. And just walking around, we started meeting people, and I was like, hey, yeah, you know, you guys, you gotta stay in town. You're like, we were restricted to posts and whatever. So we got to just hang out the first day. Then the second day, we went out to town. It's really small. Baumholder, it's small. That town, they call it like the Rock. It's like on top of a mountain or something, but super small. So got to hang out, you know, enjoy the weekend, and of course, you know, Tuesday morning, PT. Get out, you know, me, I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking, should I say. Long 4-day weekend, brand new private in Germany. I just had my too much fair share of my drinks. And we're running in a course, company command, we're in formation. I see a couple, and in great part, I'm cutting back and forth, but I show up to formation Tuesday morning, walking, and I just hear, Sal, because they call me Sal for Saladin, because Army's my last name.
Yeah.
Sal! And I'm just like, that's the most familiar voice in the world. And it's my bunkmate from Basic. He's like, what are you doing here? He's like, you're supposed to be a National Guard. And I was like, I told you I was going active. You didn't believe me. And we got put in the same company. We were literally in the same unit. And I was like, ended up meeting like 4 or 5 more guys from Basic. So it was like great. You know, it was like euphoria. I was like, oh, I'm not alone. But of course, it's like, let's go for a run. And my buddy's like, don't worry about it. It's going to be an easy run. And I'm like, all right. And of course, I'm hungover. It's just horrible. I'm miserable running. Company commander walks up to me. Runs up to me, should I say. We're running already in formation. We're probably like on mile 1 or 2, early in the run. Company commander comes up next to me. Oh, so you're my new guy. Sir, yes, sir. All right. He's like, you know, you're a good soldier. Chit-chat, good soldier. Yeah, we're running. The next thing I know, he looks at me. He's like, you were drinking. I was like, a little bit, sir. He's like, how you can tell? He just looks at me and goes, you're about to throw up. And not 2 seconds later, and he's like, don't stop running. So here I am, the new guy. Company commander is running next to me. I'm throwing up, trying not to puke on him. And all he's saying to me is, don't stop running. Like, I'm like, and he doesn't care. He's like running through my puke. And I'm more worried, like, oh my God, it's the company commander. You know, I'm scared. I'm over here throwing up. I'm like, I'm the biggest whatever. And he's just like, hey, welcome to Germany. Keep running. But I didn't stop running. And I guess he ended up liking me. And, you know, I ended up becoming, I got picked up to go work for the battalion. Like, you know, I guess they just saw me as a good guy. You know, and I rubbed them the right way, I guess.
Okay.
And,
now, initially, when you got there, were you just an ordinary grunt at that point? You were
Yes.
just an infantryman?
yeah, just basic general infantryman, no specialty training, nothing. Just
Okay. And now, how did they have a unit like that spend your time? So you're with a mechanized infantry unit, right?
Yes.
Because you're with an armored division. All right. So day to day, when you're on the base and on duty, what are you doing?
so it's like at this time we were actually they were at the end phase of their like recuperation from their last deployment. That
Okay.
unit just got through a pretty intense deployment. They were in they were part of the attachment that was in Ramadi in that phase, and they lost a lot. So they were just in the ending of it, of rebuilding. So we were like at the beginning of the training phase.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that first initial like month was a lot of like just maintenance, like maintenance of the vehicles, and no assignments were really made. People are getting tasked out, like they're reorganizing the task formations and all that. And at this time now, they're like, okay, we're picking who's going where.
Mm-hmm.
So they got all the new guys, and it's like, okay, we're gonna interview everybody. I got interviewed. They chose me to go work at the Battalion S3,
Okay.
and then it's like, all right, but even then, you're still like, you're at the Battalion S3, but you're still doing everything else too. So it's like you're still doing the line unit training. So like when they go out, you go out. So like you have to do all the computer stuff, but then you also have to go out, qualify with your weapons, and do all that. So, and at first I didn't like it because I was like, man, I'm a brand new private and I'm sitting behind a desk. And to me it's like, that's like the worst thing you could do to a brand new infantryman. I was like, what? A desk? But it ended up, it was pretty good. I learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I lasted probably my first half of my career with that unit was in the S3 because we ended up getting a completely new chain of command. So, we were all new from the privates to the commander.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, sergeant major, the colonel, everybody was new. So we kind of just meshed instantly because we knew this was the unit that was like we were going to deploy together. Like we were protecting, we were there PSD, their personal security detachment.
Mm-hmm.
Like we knew that was our job. That's who we worked for. So yeah, it was like we had to do all the computer stuff. It was like bah, but we got a lot of perks of working directly for the battalion commander. As of course.
But you were still doing some of the training and the exercises.
Yeah, you
So
still
you're-
had to do it.
So you're still going in the field when they do stuff. And
Yes.
So you are getting some part of that at the
Yeah,
same time.
the only part we didn't do were like the larger maneuvers, like a platoon or a company maneuvers. Those are the line units. But as far as like our individual training, doing our mount, which is the urban training, we still had to do all that. We had our Bradleys assigned to us. We still had to qualify with that. Like we had to do everything except for like what a infantry company would do. Like our primary job was run the battalion S3 and the security detail. So while they were working on platoon maneuvers or okay, we're gonna go learn how to shut down this village, too, we were learning how to escort the sergeant major through the raid or the village or whatever it needs to be. Is and my part in the whole thing, I was enjoying sitting behind the desk. But I did get to go. The benefit was like we would get to go shoot, and it's like we'll have to go, and of course you have a couple hundred soldiers, so there's lines. You have to wait. Oh, Sergeant Major's here. Sergeant Major doesn't wait.
Mm-hmm.
So we get to go in front. So we train, everybody's miserable waiting. We do what we got to do, qualify. Let's get back in the Humvees to get the sergeant major and the commander back to the office.
All right. Now you talk about being in the S3, and so for a
Yes.
civilian, explain what S3 refers to.
So the S3 is like a mix of like the command and control logistics, pretty much like the overall operations of what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, the operations.
Yeah.
And my specific job, I was running it was like a computer system, and pretty much is watching all the troop, learning. At this time, I'm still learning it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm learning, how to read maps, place the troops out in sector,
Mm-hmm.
identify, so pretty much the AO, how to, a private working with the commander controlling the AO, identifying like commander comes out the office, where's Alpha Company, sir, right here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it was like that, like he asked a question, you have to come up with the answer, and brand new private, but it was good because you learn a lot. as far as the overall picture.
Okay. Now, how long did you stay in Baumholder before you deployed?
Ooh, we did it was under a year.
Okay.
I know that. I don't know exactly because we were doing a lot of training, but it was probably maybe 7 months, between 7 months and a year. I
Okay.
would say is the window I was there.
All right. How would you characterize the morale in the unit at that point?
Oh, it was great. It was, and I don't know if it's just because it was my first unit experience, but everybody was like, it was, everybody was like just good mood. Everybody morale was up. The command group, and I think it's because they gave us a lot of free time because we were doing so much training. When it was like, okay, we're not in the field, it was like, go. Go. We had a lot. Like I traveled in that short window. I traveled a lot. But if I wasn't training, if I was in the field getting dirty, I was out. Like there wasn't no like, hey, just let's relax at home. It was.
Okay. So how far afield would you go when you were traveling?
Sometimes we would get day passes if we were lucky. I went out to Paris for a weekend. That was great. I went out to Munich for a weekend. So the longest you would get is a weekend pass, unless it was like scheduled leave where we could. But the furthest I like drive wise, I would say it was probably France. Like I didn't get too far. Like we wanted to go to London one day, but they denied that pass. It was too far of a drive. They said.
Yeah, it took a little while. Okay, all right. And then the people in Baumholder in that area of Germany, what kind of relationship do they have with the American soldiers?
Oh, amazing. These people were probably some of the nicest people I've met. You think too, like being brand new, you're like, oh, these people, I'm not gonna be able to talk to nobody. The whole town spoke English.
Yeah.
Like I'll go to a bar and they're like, hi, and I'm like, whoa. But they were really nice, and they were super, like, tolerant and accept, like, cause I tell you what, man, some of the stuff them soldiers did in that town, you're like, how's this base not burned to the ground right now? Like, one year, like the soldiers, they burned down like one of the oldest buildings in the town, like a historical building, and apparently some soldiers did something and it caught on fire, and I'm like, how are we still here? But very, 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 very nice town, very accepting, and like the military is really intermingled with the town. Like I noticed like a lot, like when we would get there, the first 3 weeks you would have to go to a German immersion class, so I got to learn how to speak German.
Yeah.
And it's real. It's all the employees on the base are German. It's a good relationship. I had a better relationship there than I did with the people around Fort Hood, Texas. If that says anything.
All right. Okay. Now, because I guess the Army works things in cycles. So your unit is deployed, and then you're kind of refitting, and then you gear up for the next deployment.
Yes.
So there's a phase there when you're getting ready to go back to Iraq.
Yes.
Okay. So now, what kinds of things do you do?
Now the training is picking up a lot more. You're like, you don't have these month blocks. Like we did a 30-day, came back for a weekend, did a 60-day training, came back, had like a month off, then deploy. So it's like, and so now it's like when you get your orders, that's when it's game time. You're packing, repacking, and then double checking and repacking again. It's crazy how they are with that meticulous. It's like you pack everything, it gets checked off list, then the next person comes, you have to take everything out. But once you're done with that part and they put the seals on everything that's packed, you probably get like a good 2 weeks before you time to deploy, depending on when they taking the stuff. So there's a good lull at this moment. Like you're not training because all the gear's gone. There's nothing you could do. So like at this time, they give you downtime, but don't get crazy. Like you don't get leave. It's not like, hey, you get to go home for a month. No, we're just gonna relax. So this time everybody's like, the somberness is kind of kicking in. People's like, okay, we're going to war. Like people start having that, like, okay, me and my friends, we kind of celebrate a little different. We actually, this is what kind of took us to Paris. We just went, like, we were just like, well, we're going to war, and we're hearing all the horror stories from the previous deployment. We each going to take out a $3,000 loan
Mm-hmm.
and go to Paris and Blue in the weekend. So it's so $9,000 between 3 privates in Paris before we go to Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was one of those. You know, it's one of those nights I love. You know, but that right there brought us like to give like this like us three like to this day we still talk. But man, we got so close like that weekend. It was like, you know, like we bonded. Like it was almost like. I don't want to say we knew we were gonna die or something like that, cause you know that cliche, like, oh, I'm gonna go do this, I'm gonna die. No, but that's how we thought. It was like we're probably gonna die, so like let's just live this weekend. Like we're never coming back here, and that was probably my second aha moment in the military, where I honestly was not fearing a deploying no more. It was just like, okay, accept it. Like you know, like faith is here almost. Like it's gonna, you know. If it happens on this trip, it's going to happen. Like, why fight it?
Okay. Now, what proportion of the unit that you were with at the time you went had been on the previous deployment?
In my specific, like, company, because I was in the headquarters company, we had, in my platoon, we had a pretty good seasoned guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure a lot of it had to do because of the position we held, was with the battalion command group. Okay. But a lot of the NCOs were like, you know, multiple deployments, you know.
Okay. All right. Because I guess you mentioned that a lot of your command group was new, or at least,
yeah.
But they're new to the unit.
New to the unit, not as far as new as like new to the Army.
Okay. But the men in the line companies, did you have a fair number who had been the previous?
Yes, one? We had a good line. Like a lot of the NCOs were from, and that's the thing about Baumholder. They retained a lot of their people. So a lot of the NCOs were from the previous deployment, and even, you know, they like 2 deployments with that unit. But the way they would do is they would shuffle the companies. So like you wouldn't be in the same company, but you would see in the same unit. Okay. So that was like, I think that was a good thing. A lot of the like, it was a lot of new privates too, but a lot of them saw that, you know, all our leadership was seasoned people.
Okay. And at this point now, do they give you any kind of orientation for this is Iraq or welcome to the Middle East?
When we get,
or did that happen only after you got over?
Right before we went, we would do like a couple little like computer things, like they make you do these little classes where it's like try to teach you about it, but you know, it's check the box teaching.
Okay.
So it's not much. It's like, here's a pamphlet, learn it. Nobody, maybe the command group read it.
All right. So you're not touring mock-up Iraqi villages or things like that?
Not yet. To an extent, to like your specific leader, like your NCO, if you wanted to be like, hey, let's put a sand table together. If you had some leaders that were that, you know, ahead of the game and wanted to do it, yeah, but a lot of that didn't start till we got there.
All right. Okay. So now you head over to Iraq in late 2007, is that?
Yeah, it was around, I want to say like, it was the winter. I know that because we left Germany in the middle of a snowstorm.
Okay.
Got to Kuwait and it was hot. And it was the most miserable thing ever. Because I remember going on the bus and the plane, I'm like, it's so freezing. And when they opened the bus, it like just instantly got like 120 degrees, and you're just like, oh. So like, we're here.
Okay. You land in Kuwait. Now what happens?
We land in Kuwait. We're at the base. It's a fast process. You get to the airport in Kuwait. There, you like it's not like here. Like you get off the plane, go into the terminal. No, in Kuwait, you get off the plane, you get on the bus. You don't even see the civilians. It's like a complete police escort. It's like you get on the road and it's like 100 miles an hour nonstop. Like it was. Each bus had 2 guards. Like, okay, here, you know, you got a full mag. You just went from carrying a blank weapon to, okay, here's 2 magazines full of ammo. You're the guard for the bus. I'm like, wait, what? Like, we're not in Iraq yet. So, okay, we're there. And you're flying down the highway. Police escort, just buses zooming. We get to the large base in Kuwait, and there's when classes start. We're there for about, is it 2 weeks? Fluctuates, a week. On return, you might sit there for 3 weeks. Depends on, you know, the movement, whatever. But classes, it's classes. Like you're doing classes on animals. Like we literally had a class telling us not to fight spiders and scorpions. Like there's so many classes from bombs to animals to culture. Like they really were, and I guess at this time, it was the whole when.
Was the period of the surge or
Yeah,
around then?
it was around the surge, but it was also when Petraeus, when they were pushing the whole from the inside, the coin strategy that they were
Yeah,
implementing.
well, that was part of the surge.
Yes.
The surge was sort of just adding, was called it because they added more men.
Yes.
But that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
They were sending them into the local communities. Yeah.
And then that's when they were teaching the more culture stuff. Like, okay, like, this means this. This is what's going on here. Like, okay, and then they would try to teach more like specific region. Like we were going, my first deployment went to southern Iraq. So it was like, hey, this is what the mostly population you're going to encounter.
Mm-hmm.
This is, the lifestyle. This is do's and don'ts pretty much of Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
And then do a couple more weapons training, weapons qualification, knock the dust off, make sure everybody's still good.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were mechanized, so a good group of people had to drive the Bradleys to the base from Kuwait into Iraq. But we were in southern Iraq, so it wasn't, nothing crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But other people, like me, I was part of the advance party, so I got to fly into the base we were going to. That was pretty cool. It was on the night. That was awesome. Flew into a really small, it was a small, maybe a 3 square mile base. It was a COP, they called it at the time, a combat outpost.
Okay. All right. And did you fly in a helicopter?
Yes, it was a Chinook. They flew us in because it was we stopped at 3 different bases, and each group got dropped off at their little base.
All right. And when you got into your base, now what do you see? What happens?
Oh, man. I'm not gonna lie. The helicopter lands. Ramp was open, but I was scared a little bit because it was nighttime and they go dark conditions at night at this time, still on the base. So I don't see nothing. I'm coming off a helicopter. I got a couple guys there to greet me. Hey, welcome to Cop Carver. This is what's going on. Follow me. And you look around, you don't see walls. So you're like, am I out in the open? Like, I've never been I'm a brand new private, never been here. So I'm like, I got my rifle. I'm like, all right, I'm waiting for the attack. I'm like, it's gonna happen, and everybody's like, you're right, relax, it's cool. And I'm just like, okay, so getting a tour of the small base, which I don't know what they're touring me because I can't see nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they take us into the TOC. This is where you're gonna be working. I'm like,
And that's
all
the
right.
Tactical Operations Center.
Correct.
Yeah.
They're like, this is where you're gonna be working. So I'm getting familiar, and of course, me as a private, I go to where my job's gonna be. Who's doing my job? A captain. And I'm like, and the guy turns and looks at me, he's like, you're doing this? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, great. Great. I'm like, this is the experience I wanted on day one, And but, luckily they were a great group of people. It was the 3rd Infantry Division. We were replacing, great bunch of dudes. We replaced them. I sat by this guy. I was there for like a week before my unit came. So I sat every day. I was next to this guy learning everything. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't as bad as it seemed, but it was they had to give me that initial oh man. But it was, that first week was pretty smooth because it was more of shadowing him, come in, shadow for a couple hours, and it was like 12-hour shifts. It was like 12 on, 12 off. 12. So I would come in maybe for like 3-4 hours. Like the first day was like an hour or two. Then I pretty much, the rest of the day, I'm, sitting in my room reading a book or working out in the gym. And that was my life for about a week.
Okay. Now, but you got a chance to see outside in the daylight.
Yeah, in the daytime.
And was this basically just flat open country you were in?
No, so we were, the terrain was flat. A lot of dust, moon dust, just this soft, powdery, red sand that's everywhere. And then we had about 2 or 3 square miles of like the big T-wall barriers on the outside with two entrances, a north and a south. And once I saw that, I was like, okay, there's some order here. Like, it's not Wild West, like you're not gonna have a charge over the hills. But it was, but then besides the base, it was clear all around it. It was a previous chemical facility or something that got blown up. So it was like half of a solid structure standing, which they used as a building. To this day, I don't know how it didn't fall on nobody. But hey, it worked. And then my first dinner in Iraq was, breakfast, or meal, should I say, because I don't even know what time it was like eggs and biscuits, but I call it a soup because we had no overhead cover and it was raining. So, of course, I'm not going to go inside, I'm eating. All right, welcome to Iraq, a plate of soup breakfast.
At least it was raining.
Yeah, the one time, and it was crazy. The 2 times I went to Iraq, I experienced rain in southern Iraq for the first time, and then when I was in northern Iraq the second time, snow. When I was up there, it snowed, and that was like the first time in summer. I was like, hey.
Lucky you. Okay. Now, was there anything going on in that area when you got there?
It was a pretty the unit before us, they had some losses. It was a rough little spot. Like, they were actually, that unit was the first American unit to step in that area. It wasn't, and then we came in. They just, like, in the middle of building this base, like they still had, like, Humvees outside. They lost a couple people building the base. It was a pretty rough spot. It was a stronghold for, at this time, it was AQI, they were called, Al Qaeda in Iraq. And they had a pretty good grip there. So we came in, we had a lot of focus on capturing high value targets. Like, that was our huge, like, task forces mission. We a lot of captures. Like, we went on a few raids. We went on early on. Like, even when I got there, before the unit was there, they were conducting raids. I got to sit on the office on and help coordinate and all that. And my unit, we finally come in, get established in the area. Probably about, a few months. It's quiet. We got 1 or 2 arrests. We're trying not to come in and cause too much of commotion. We're picking up where the last unit left off. Asking for aid, what you need for the town. We're establishing they got the little, I guess, town hall, conference, whatever you call them. Getting that going. It's going good. It's about 3 months in, and that's when we get our first, bam, something happens.
All right. Okay.
So I'm gonna do it from, like, my perspective.
Well, actually, this tape is almost up. So before we kind of get into
Yeah.
this, in those first 3 months when things are quiet, are you going into any of the towns yourself or seeing any of the Iraqis?
Me, myself, at this time, I'm not. I'm still working in the TOC.
Yeah.
But I'm having I know a lot of what's going on because of my position.
Right.
And I'm interacting with a lot of the people because we have a lot of people coming into the base. I'm having a lot of interaction like that. I'm seeing the town from our camera. We have the giant blimp watching everything. Okay. So I get to see that. So I'm seeing it from afar, but I'm seeing everything that's going on, and it's a pretty, as far as conflict-wise, like, on each other. Like, we had these constantly going after each other in this area.
So the Iraqis were going after each other.
Yeah, the locals, just I guess power grab, whatever it was at this time, because there was nothing.
But your guys were kind of largely standing aside from that.
Well, we were conducting raids. We were arresting. We had a few good raids under our belts, like, early on, because this place was just rich with targets. So we had, but that was one of the things. Like, we went on all these raids and didn't fire a single shot. It was good. Like, I got to go on one actually with the command group. It was a nighttime raid, my first raid ever I went on, and man, it was the way it was done, like the way it was conducted. We marched in, well, that's probably walked in nighttime, cover of darkness, from a mile out. We cut all the vehicles. We all walked in, and we essentially shut down the whole village. It was like, so right when we were about getting ready to enter the village, like, on foot, call up the trucks drive in. So by when they hear the trucks, we're already inside. So there's no way to leave this village. It was completely locked down. it had to be over 50 houses. Not a single round fired, and I think we arrested like 3 high value targets. It was like, and then seeing it was like amazing. It was like just how, just watching it, like it was like organized chaos. It's probably the best way I could put it, because like you got doors being kicked in over here, you got yelling over here, explosion on this road, but it's still coordinated. And I'm sitting there with the command group, and you hear it over the radio. Everything collapsing, coordinated, like, hey, like, this zone, phase line alpha just crossed, this is complete, we're moving in here. And before you know it, systematically, we just shut down this whole town, arrested these 3 guys, and not a single round fired, and that stuff just amazed me. Like, me, I went in, I was like, okay, all hell's about to break loose. Like, you think of the movies, like, oh, you're going after the bad guy, bombs are going to be blowing up, everything, but no, just almost surreal, like it was a real, like that was a surreal moment for me.
But they're still kicking indoors, or were there as opposed to just knocking and talking?
No, there wasn't no knocking. It was we're here. Like it was, we're here, we're coming to get you, we know you're here. And
but nobody resisted.
No, and it's interesting because we had 2, not 2, but we had a bunch of other, but as far as where we received mass cal or something, none of them were on operations. It's crazy. Like all the operations we did, nothing. The first one, we were doing a town hall meeting. At the end of the town hall meeting, one of the members, council member, and I mean, like, we're giving these people everything. Like they asked for it. We're at this point where we just have a lot of money, I guess, and we're just, we're handing them hundreds of thousands of dollars cash. Like, here, like, let's fix this place up. This guy comes out of the town hall meeting, like he's walking to his car. He pulls out an AK and just started spraying. He ended up taking out 2 of our guys, badly wounded our interpreter, wounded one of our medics, but he got taken out pretty good, pretty effectively, to say the least. But I wasn't there. Like, that one was, I was working at the TOC, and I had the night shift, got off the night shift, was going to my room, and I met my guy, one of my guys that we lost, well, not my guys, a friend of mine that we lost there. We were talking, and it's crazy because, like, we were talking the whole time.
Okay. Now, we had gotten to the point in your story when you had been in Iraq in your first tour for a little while, and we're still working on the Tactical Operations Center, and you talked about an incident where some of the people from your headquarters unit were in the nearby town, and one of the people at that meeting pulled out an AK-47 and started shooting people.
Yes.
And so you mentioned that happened, but you said you were back at the talk,
Yes.
and you were running on the radios, and you were starting to talk about talking to one of your friends.
Yes.
And so kind of give us the now were you talking about, this is something was this someone who was there later, or?
Yeah, well, this was like, I guess I jumped ahead of myself. Yeah. This is one of the guys he was out there. Mm-hmm. And this was like before they left. Right. I just finished my shift at the TOC. No, we had a little conversation, crossing paths. We talked for a while. He's like, hey, you coming out? But it was one of those more like, he knew I was coming off shift, and it was like a little, almost like a jive, like he knew I wasn't going nowhere. So it was like, hey, I was like, nah, we talked, whatever, and we left. It's another routine moment. We see each other every morning, crossing paths. I get off work, he's getting ready to go do whatever he's doing, and I go to my room, and then a few hours later, you hear like a different pace in people's footsteps. Like, you hear people walking. Like, there was a lot of gravel where we had our rooms to kind of keep the dust down. Mm-hmm. So you could hear people walking, you could tell, but like this moment is just a lot of scattering, running. You're like, okay, something's up, but you don't know. I go out, and they were already back at this moment. So I go out, and it's like, whoa, like, I was starting to see, haven't heard nothing yet, I'm just seeing stuff. I see the truck, bullet holes, see some of my buddies over there upset. I'm like, okay, but I just instantly go to the TOC because we all have designated jobs to do in situations like that. So that was our first incident. Like, as far as my recollection of it is more of the office part from the debriefs, putting together the stuff like that. Like, I don't have firsthand knowledge.
Right.
I wasn't there,
Right.
but you know, talking to my friend, you get pretty good picture, you know, of
Oh, yeah.
because I had to sit there and listen to everybody during the investigations and all that. So because of my position I held in the talk, so.
And was that sort of the first real sort of shooting incident that happened while you were there?
Yes, that was like okay, we're here, you know, like we had few minor IEDs, but none against us. It was all like civilian stuff. Like we had a couple like civilian, like, you know, local populace on each other incidents. Nothing like that. That was our first, like, okay, you know, like it's real. So.
Okay. Now, also, when you were talking about the event when the shooting took place, you talked about the officers going in there and basically handing out money to
Yes.
the
Yes.
Iraqis, and what, as far as you can tell, was the money supposed to be for?
It was they had this was around the time they were setting up we called them Sons of Iraq. They were their names, and they was pretty much allies we were getting, and they were manning more in-depth checkpoints like in the towns. Like, you know, we would have a little, but they were 24/7. Like, we would get the local, pretty much, I guess, better local militia to put it. I don't know what they would call each other. And then the head sheikh would come, have like, hey, I have 50 guys and they're willing to man checkpoint such and such, and we would give them money, and then he would pay them, and that'd be their job. So
Right.
pretty much we were paying them. So, and the money, you know, it went, and it was interesting to see, because, you know, you're just like, okay, I see the process. Like, okay, we're paying them the money. And then there's always that thought, like, are these guys really getting this money? Like, you know, it's like, because you give it to this one guy, he's the head of the town, or whatever you want to call him, and then you're like, yeah, I'm sure this guy is probably.
Yeah.
Cop.
Well, there's probably a certain amount of graft built into the payment. I mean,
Yeah.
there's something he's going to keep some of it. On the other hand, you'd have to pay the guy something if they're going,
Yeah.
if he's going to deliver. But yeah, so kind of part of the sort of larger strategy to get into the community and engage it and get people on our side.
Yeah, it
essentially.
was almost like buying a militia to our team, you know, like, because I'm pretty sure a lot of these guys were guys we were fighting, you know, few, you know, throughout the time. So it's just like, okay, hey, let's just do the smart thing. These guys are really, you know, they're here, want to protect their town, so okay, let's pay them to protect their town.
Okay. And were there any other kind of significant incidents that took place while you were still in the talk, or does the other
Well,
stuff get more interesting after you
There
move
was
on?
trying to think. There was one other incident, but it wasn't. No, we had no casualties or nothing. But I remember it was like the day I was leaving to go on my R&R. It's like I'm in the top trying to get, like, you know, get your last minutes of work in, because, you know, that's how it is. And I'm sitting there as I'm getting ready to leave. It's like, oh, this truck got hit with an IED, and I'm just like, oh, and I'm like, I don't want to go now. You know, I'm like, what's going on? So I'm like halfway out the door. They're like, the helicopter's here, and I'm just like, no. So, but it ended up being, it was okay. It was the truck is what got hurt. They were able to get up, leave, and then I went on my vacation a couple of weeks.
Okay. Now, where do you go on the R&R? Do you go back home, or do you?
You can actually pick where you want to go, like, and they'll pretty much give you a plane ticket anywhere in the world for your R&R. Me, I decided to go back home. Just wanted to go to family, so went back to New Jersey. Spent I think it was 2 weeks they gave us.
Okay.
Like 2 weeks home. You know, it was awesome. You know? It was probably the best 2 weeks ever.
All right. But was it okay going back again? I mean, were you ready to do that?
I was and I wasn't. Like, the whole time out there, I was like, okay, you know, in my mind, I'm like ready. I'm like, okay, it's my job. Let's go do this. You know, I'm like, okay, let's get back. When I get to the airport and I check my ticket, it like all hit me at one time, and I was just like, oh. And then my family standing there, and I'm like, no, you know, just hold it together. Just hold it together. And then they start crying. You're like, great. And then I couldn't hold it. I start crying. And I'm just like, come on, stop. I'm like, I need to get out of here. You know, I'm in uniform. But it was really weird, because then I go, and then they're like, oh, you can't leave till tomorrow. So I got an extra day. So all that huss and fuss, and then the next day I was like, you guys ain't even allowed in the airport. I'm like, just stay in the car. I'm out of here. And I walked right in and left. I was like, no, I can't do that again.
All right. Now, when you got back again, did you go back to the job in the talk, or were you switching to something else?
That's when the process started. So I get to the talk, and it was pretty cool. I like my one of the operations sergeant major walked up to me. He's like, okay. He's like, it's your turn to rotate to the line companies, because that's just how they do it. They don't want to keep a private too long in the office, because So, but he was like, I would like to have you with the PSD, which is it was an attachment of like that was still responsible to the command group, but they just didn't work in the TOC. They did all the patrols and maneuvers. Like whenever the command group, which is the head, the higher ups, would go out and travel any engagements, because they would go out and meet with the locals too. So they were pretty much like the headquarters line company, you could say. So they were like, okay, because they had sent like 2 of those guys down to the line companies. It was like, we need. So I was like, sure, I was like, not too many times the sergeant major was like, hey, I would like if you do this. So I was like, of course, me, I'm like, I'm not gonna say no.
Yeah.
So I was I ended up staying in the TOC for like 2 more weeks, and I think that was the hardest part. So I would have went to the line company, I was like gone that night. But he was like, you go to the PSD, he's like, you're gonna stay in the TOC for like 2 more weeks. That's just so we could get stuff rotated around, whatever. And it was so hard. I was like, oh, I saw that, like I tasted it. I was like, it's there. And then finally, in that period, we had our second incident while I was in the TOC still. So in this one, I was on the radio, like full from first contact to the end out. And this one, I would say, like the other one, I knew the people a little more that had passed, and it affected me hard. But this one, I think it was because I was so direct with it. It hit me a little bit harder, and I was just like, whoa, it's just like you're sitting on the radio, it's quiet afternoon, and then all of a sudden, troops in contact. And then that's the room. It's like, this is probably one of the loudest, most organized rooms ever. Then all of a sudden, it's like, those 3 words is just pin drop. Like, everything gets quiet. The only person talking is the man on the radio and the man on the other end of the radio. So that's me. I'm sitting here talking to this guy, and everybody's just there. Like, the commander, sergeant major, everybody's looking at him. I'm just like, we're talking. And it's going, and, like, you start seeing the situation start developing. I'm like, okay, this is getting serious. Start spinning up elements to go, and then you get the report. Such and such is down. And then they report it. You don't get the name. It's like you get your battle number, and I know the battle number because that's part of my job. And I'm like, oh, I know this person, and that's when and then all of a sudden everybody's coming back, and at this time, the night shift is coming, because I got switched to morning shift now at this time. So the night shift is getting ready to come into the TOC. So my replacement comes. They're like, hey, man the radio. They're ready off the area. They're coming back. There's no units out. So, and then me, I'm like, what's going on? They're like, you get to go now to the aid station and direct the traffic to the helicopter that's coming, because I had the radio. So now I'm communicating with the TOC, the helicopter, and the medics. And I wasn't ready for this. I walk into the room to tell them the helicopter's coming. I open the door and I just see, like, I'm like, wow. Like, it was like, I don't even know. I'm lost for words. It was like just one of those moments where you just like, oh my God. And it just.
So you're seeing people with battle wounds.
Yes, and like being worked on, like and it's just like you just see blood, and the first incident I saw blood and I saw the aftermath of the bad guy. That didn't bother me. He had body parts come. It was perfectly fine. I come here, I go in the room, and it's blood and somebody being worked on, and I'm just like, oh, and it just like. Everything just got sucked out of me. It was like, wow, like reality. Like, and I don't want to say reality because that sunk in a while back, but it was just like, whoa. Okay, so I'm snap to. I'm like, all right, hey, birds coming in, you got 5 mics, these people need to be there as soon as it comes. They're finishing up, I'm on the radio yelling the time, and that's my sole job. It's just stand there and yell the time as loud as I can. Nothing else I'm responsible for. So I'm just by minute just counting it down, and I felt like it was forever. And then next thing I know, it's like, helicopters, 30 seconds. And I look, and they're like on the table working on them, and as soon as I tell them 30 seconds, they're like gone. I don't even realize, I'm like, just like, oh, I'm behind now. So now, we go out, sitting at the landing, right outside the landing zone. Buddies are there, and all you can do is look at them, and it's just one of that surreal moment. You're just like, wow,
Yeah.
But on the upside of that, a good friend of mine was there, and his actions, I'm telling you, man, was and hearing it from everybody else that was there, I'm like, I would have loved to have been there just to see his maneuverability. Like, I guess they got ambushed from a house or something. I don't know the exact layout, but he was positioned in a point where he had direct view and access of the house. So these guys are under fire from a house and like pretty much ambush. He just goes, this 20-something-year-old kid goes, grabs a guy, and they just headstrong charge into this house. And he's carrying a saw, 249 saw, and they just head charge into this house and just light it up. And everybody was like, and it's funny because the way everybody described it they was like, it was just like a movie. And because you hear everybody tell you like, oh, it was nothing like the movies. Everybody was like, this is just like the movies. Like, he just got up and went in that door. It was like so systematic, and I was just like, that was amazing, and just that I heard that happen on the radio and then hear everybody's encounter, I was like, that goes to show you how in the middle of all that you could still go and function. And I just thought the whole matter that he did it in, and he was a specialist too, young. You don't expect that from a younger, newer guy, but man, this guy, I was like, yeah.
Okay. Now, you mentioned carrying a saw, and a lot of people won't know what that is.
Okay, yes, it's a squad automatic weapon. It's pretty much our machine gun for the line companies.
Right.
You have your bigger ones on the trucks and that, but that's more the dismounted. You got your 2 riflemen and your machine gunner. He's supposed to say like suppressive fire. That's the guy. Like, you usually don't go into a building with a saw.
Yeah.
Like, if you go in with the saw, he pulls rear security, covers the door for you, keep anybody coming in or whatever.
But it's a lot of firepower.
Yes, that is known for we call it in the line company the most mass casualty producing weapon in the squad. And you carried the saw. You hated marching with it, but you love shooting it. It's one of those things, like, you hate having to be responsible for it and deal with it, but I'm telling you, when it came time to need the firepower, you were like, yes, like, I'm glad to be behind this one. Yeah, that was...
Okay. And I suppose in the meantime, you've now had these experiences, so if you're going to be out in the field and stuff will happen, you're maybe a little bit more prepared for that than
Yes, and that I took to my advantage, being around the higher ups and those and like almost like being out on every patrol without being out there, because I saw, and I just saw, and I got to see it from, as opposed to brand new private, you're told, hey, go pull security, cover this sector, so that's what you know. Me, I'm looking at it from the bigger perspective, the tactical. I'm like, oh, I know why they're here, because they're securing this section and sectors of. So now when I go to the unit, to the PSD, I'm not like your average private. The squad leaders come in, they give us the report, hey, this is what we're doing. In my head, I'm like, oh, I can see this whole thing planned out. I'm like, yeah, okay, so we got this, and they loved it, and that kind of gave me upper hand, because I always picking at like the commander's brains and stuff when I was in the top. So I knew a lot of stuff. I knew a lot of formations. I knew and it just helped me, and I became a team leader pretty fast. Like it was like within a month, I was already a team leader, which is like.
So when you're actually out there in the field now, what does PSD stand for? Or do they know exactly?
It's personal security detachment.
Okay.
Yeah, I almost forgot. I was like, I can't remember. It was a personal security detachment, and we pretty much were assigned to the command group.
Okay.
The sergeant major,
A company commander?
no, battalion. We were the battalion PSD. So we had the battalion commander, the battalion sergeant major, the ops sergeant major, and if we would have like the like supply officer or something like that had to go do a logistics run. Pretty much any other officers in battalion we were responsible for.
Okay. So you're working with some of the same people you were already working with,
Yes.
but now you're in the field with them
now
rather
I'm
than...
going out and doing the whole field engagements, and because they will go out and meet like the tribe leaders and stuff like that. So now I was actually getting to go, and it was really cool. I got to sit down in a lot of goat grabs, and that was, oh man.
Goat grabs?
Yeah, so that my first experience of that thing too is for the books. So a goat grab, what they'll do is the locals, they'll get a whole goat and they cook it and they surround it with veggies, fruits, and bread, and it's just this giant platter, and they sit it down and everybody's just sitting in a circle, and it's literally that, everybody's just grabbing at it and eating. And that's how I guess politics are done over there. You'll spend 3 hours drinking chai and eating goat, and an hour talking about what you came to talk about. You know? So it was like there was times we would have to go and we were pulling security for hours, and we're just like, and you look over and all the leaders are like drinking chai and eating. You're just like, come on, like really? But we would benefit because they would come around and give us food and stuff like that. Because it was a little bit more of a, I don't want to say relaxed, but because we were with the higher ups who we were engaging with, we weren't as much and I don't want to say expecting because we always were expecting, especially after the first incident. Like it was, like we were on high alert, especially that platoon, because we took the biggest casualty of the deployment. But it was almost like, as opposed to if you go out on a raid, you're pulling security on that where you're expecting it. These these leaders are welcoming you into their house, and you don't think this guy's gonna do something when he got all his kids and everybody just walking around open freely. Like that stuff you could pick on. If you go somewhere and also you notice all the kids are like running in the buildings, you're like, okay, like let's tighten it up a little bit. But if you got everybody running around and you can notice the environment, you're like, okay, I'm in this guy's house. We have supremely overwhelming firepower. We're all right now. So, but we always had, June 23rd in the back of our head, because it was just, just an event. But it was really cool. Got to experience it. So my first goat grab, hey, here's a plate of food. I'm like, yes, it was so good. All of a sudden, I don't feel well. I get dysentery. And we're still about few hours left out in sector, and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with myself. I'm just I got so sick. And that was like probably my first week. I don't want to say my first patrol, but definitely like my first week. It was like, now my impression is I'm here with the command sergeant major in this truck heading back to base, and he's like, what's wrong? And I'm on the floor like, I don't know, like I think I'm poisoned. Like, but nobody else is sick. So obviously we didn't get poisoned, but it was just like, man, like, and it was so bad. But a couple of days later, I was fine.
Did you get any treatment for it?
Yeah, they had these pills. I don't remember the name of it, but I was down for like the rest of the day. Good thing it was only a day. The next morning, of course, I didn't have a choice. I had to get up and go out, but I was fine the next morning. But I was just like, whoa. But I think it kind of helped me because every other time I ate it, I didn't learn my lesson. I went out and ate again, but I was fine every time. So I was just like, maybe I just had to get used to it. Because you get tired of the military food fast.
Sure.
You get the same thing, and you're just like, okay, you know what? I'm going to try that meat on that plate.
All right. Now, when you're on a base like this, I mean, are they cooking any food, or is it all MREs or whatever?
It's at this time, the early part. I say probably like 8 months out of the whole time we were there, we was pretty small. Like first we had a little trailer. It was like they call it an MKT. I don't mobile kitchen.
Mobile,
tent.
yes.
Yeah. So that's what we had. So it was enough space for them to cook and you to walk through, get your food, and walk out and find a place to eat. Because we were still had tents and our connexes. So and we never ate in our rooms. Just no, you don't want that critters coming in your room. So we're eating outside. Then eventually we got a bigger tent. So now we could actually, it was like I forget what they call them, a GP, a big, so we had it in there. We got to set up in there. Had to probably sit maybe 100 people, eat in there. It's a lot better, know. And then towards the end of the deployment, they got contractors and they built this huge, nice facility. I'm like, of course, when we're leaving. And they get the private contractors coming in and you see all like the good food. You're like, oh, they even got midnight chow. I'm like, I'm lucky if I ate twice a day. Like now, you go 24 hours and get a meal. But it was one of those things that I was kind of like glad. You're like, oh, I see where it came from. But then you was like, whatever. I'm going back to America.
All right. Now, to sort of take us now. So you basically got sort of this. You've gotten through the first few months of your tour now, and now you're going into the rest. You'll be there for 15. Now, describe the kind, aside from going out and meeting with the local leaders and having goat grabs, what else were you doing? What kind of missions would you run?
The operation tempo was it was a pretty high operation tempo. We had a lot of, in that area, there was a lot of targets, high value targets I wanted. And if we weren't out conducting like raids to arrest people or killer capture missions, I guess you would call them at that time, we were doing pulling security for other units. And like we had our command group, they were out every day. If it wasn't a key leader engagement, we were attaching ourselves to a line company to go assist in whatever missions, because it was like wasn't a huge task force either. We were in our area was just two line companies, headquarters company, and then like another company got attached to another unit. But we had other smaller units attached to us, but for the most part, it was just majority of the missions was the two line companies. So we would go out and attach ourselves to them and go on raids. Majority was just a lot of arrest. We did. I couldn't even tell you the amount of people we, like, even when I was working in the TOC, we had a lot. When I was out on the line with the PSD, it felt like every other day we were going out. And if it wasn't us, we were securing a raid going on. And it was actually, like, pretty impressive. Like, considering all of our incidents weren't on raids. They were like the second incident we had, they were just doing a presence patrol. They were just walking around town, like 2 minutes before that engagement, they were talking to a little kid on a bike, just neighborhood stuff. And out of all the raids we did, high value targets, it was like some scary guys. Like we would go in expecting like something's gonna happen. Like it was like, okay, we're gonna get contact tonight, but they were all just good, like, and it's just they all went down, and I wish I remembered how many we did. It was a lot. Like I think we even got recognized. Our unit got like a presidential unit citation for that achievement.
Okay. Now, did you have any idea what sorts of people you were going after?
Yes.
Okay.
I knew that from my experience of being in the TOC and seeing, the paperwork. You're like, okay, this target is wanted, suspected of ID making, kidnapping, whatever crime. Like, I saw that. So, and then we would get told too, like before the mission, you get a mission brief, you get your package. It's like, this is what we're going after. Because even though we weren't the front line going in first to the house, everybody had to know who the target was. You never know. Try to escape so we could recognize. So you would study them, see them, who they are. But it was like, a lot of the times it was a lot of information. Because it'd be like, okay, look out for these vehicles. And sometimes it was a list of like 8 vehicles. And then you have these license plates, and then on top of that, they were written in Arabic. So you're just like, okay, like if it's the bad guy, I think we'll know by the time he gets to us. So there were, but me, I just knew from working in the office. But some of them like were some real bad dudes. Like there was one guy we arrested, and he was known for like I think he was responsible for what was it? Not like mass graves, killing like just killing a bunch of people, and you know we were like, okay, this guy's gonna go down with a fight. No, it's, you know, and you see them come out, and you see these guys, and they're, I don't know if they just, I don't know. It's like you read these lists, and you're like, this guy's just like a real evil man, and then when we come down on them, they were just like, like, here, just take me away. And I don't know, it's because they knew whatever it was at that time. We had a lot of guys going in and coming out. I don't know if just they knew that if they waited out long enough, they might just get recycled through the system and released. Because at that time, there was a surge. Government of Iraq was still, favorites were being played, you know, such and such, religion, people, whatever, however you want to look at it, we're getting, you know, like, oh, we don't have evidence on this guy, you gotta let him go.
Right.
And so it was a lot of that too.
And do you have business for these, as far as you could tell, basically local residents, or were there Al Qaeda types from somewhere else?
Oh, a lot in this area. A lot of it was like an influx of Al Qaeda, and this time, this when they would call themselves Al Qaeda in Iraq. AQI is what we knew them as, and then what was the other name? There was like another name they were transitioning to. I can't remember. It was like AQI and then something AQ some whatever. But we definitely had a few that were not from that area. Because we one thing that we had good was the unit before us. They were doing a lot of like civil, I guess you could call it, like investing on schools. Like they just got done building a brand new school. So we kind of knew, but then like you would tell, like, okay, like. And then you have a lot of this part of Iraq, southern Iraq. So this part was still very tribal. It wasn't urban. So you could tell, like, but then you also have times where the sheikh would come, hey, this guy's not from around here, and then we would go, and then you talk to him, and you'll find out that this guy lived here 30 years ago, and he came and moved his family out, and he came and took. So a lot of times that was hard because it was a lot of disputes like that. But there was a few times where, you know, we would have like, okay, you know, we know this guy, we got the intel, this guy just came in, he's hiding out in this area. And those were the ones that were a little more, because this place before we came was a real hot spot for them. Like it was a safe haven, you could say, because it wasn't that far from the Iranian border, so they had easy access, so it was a good hot spot for them. I think we were the second unit there from the unit we replaced. So they had some good, and like we had a few raids that actually like special forces groups were conducting, and we had to pull security for them, and like those were the ones where we were like, hey, I noticed that guy from a deck of cards. So those were pretty cool ones, like, you know, but we didn't get to partake. Like I would love to go inside a building with them, and but we just kind of were like the outer security. We got to hear the chatter on the radio, and you know, it's like, boom, you're on target. Next, you know, they're leaving in a helicopter. You're like, oh, we got our guys. See you later. Thank you. And stuff like that.
Okay. Now, how bad were the IED problems?
That, for that deployment, they were a lot. But we had the engineers, roadside EOD. Their vehicles, oh man. But they had the vehicles that were designed for it. But they went through so many. They would do route conditions, green, red, yellow, meaning, you know, green, safe to travel.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, at least 70% of our area was like red. It's like we could not travel. Because it was like, you know you're going to get hit if you go down this road. And it was for the whole 15 months we had roads like that. And it wasn't like a speculation. It was like, okay, route clearance is going to go down this road today. This road is red. We're going to expect to encounter, you know, half a dozen IEDs. And sure enough, like 2 minutes into it, we got our first IED. And it was intense. Like, that was a huge, especially because it was a marshy, swampy terrain, so it was real easy. And then we were limited to our vehicles. Like, we couldn't use the big Mraps all the time or the Bradleys. We were confined to the Humvees, and we took the Mraps out a lot because the IEDs were a lot, so we needed the more protection.
And explain what an MRAP is.
So it's a mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicle. That's what MRAP stands for. But it's pretty much a reinforced, if you want to think of it, oversized mini school bus. The bottom, the bottom is designed to reflect explosions to the side. It's a well-armored vehicle, but they are so big and clumsy, them things. It's because they're high center of gravity. The slightest uneven terrain, the thing is bouncing, and you're just like, oh my, I'm about to roll over. And that happened often. We got pretty good at self-recovering vehicles, because them things, as much money they spent on would just get stuck in for nothing. But they did good against bombs, so you gotta give or take. Like I'll get stuck in mud and not get blown up.
All right. Did the overall rhythm or pattern of things change at all during that year?
Towards the end, we noticed, cause we would get a lot of sporadic engagements with the checkpoint personnel, and we noticed towards the end that died down a lot. The IEDs died down a lot, but I think it's because we recovered a lot of stashes. Like, we found so many caches. It was insane the amount of caches of IEDs we found. It was almost like they had so many they just didn't care. It was like you take a metal detector, walk outside, and beep, oh, here you go. It was insane, and that died down a little bit. The engagements kind of started dying down. And I would say for the better part of the last, 4 months, it was just nothing. It was pretty quiet, with your exception of your local disagreements and that stuff. But, as far as against the coalition troops, it was I don't know if we just did that good of a job, which I doubt, because I kept in touch with people in that area after we left, and they still had same stuff going on, but we did reduce it enough. It was especially me going from the talk and seeing it, we definitely put a huge impact in that area. I wouldn't say an American soldier was going to walk out the base and be perfectly fine, but it was a lot safer than when we first got there too. And I'm pretty sure it's just a gradual improvement. And I'm pretty sure, who knows if I go there now, though, I don't know. But
Yeah, and that does seem to be part of a larger pattern that was taking place.
Yes.
And so there was some progress being made at stabilizing things, at least, which is sort of what the surge was supposed to do. Yes. And then it's up to the Iraqis to clean up their act after that. Okay, did you get to know many of the Iraqis at all, or?
At this time, the first deployment I did a little bit, but not too much, for the simple fact of who we were engaging with. We weren't, at this time, they didn't have the whole, you had to be with an Iraqi army and stuff like that. And so this time we were still independently operating. So when I would engage with the local, it would be more like the higher ups, or short conversations with them, stuff like that. So I never really, but I did get a feel for the environment going out, because you would notice, the first few months going out, just the looks on their faces compared to once they realize okay, I'm actually here trying to do something positive for them. You get the friendly waves, you get a smile, you're like, okay, you start noticing that, hey, they like us.
Now, did you have any Iraqis assigned to you as interpreters or whatever?
We had interpreters, but at this time they were from the U.S. Okay. They were assigned. They came over with us, and because we still didn't have, the closest interaction with the locals were base contractors. They would bring us, whatever supplies or whatever it was we needed, and even that interaction was minimal. If you wasn't in charge of them, you wasn't talking to them.
All right. What ability did you have to communicate with anybody back home?
That was actually had a good setup. It wasn't the best, but it surprised me. I was oh, maybe I'll get a phone call every couple of weeks, but they had a pretty good little tent setup. It was maybe maybe a dozen computers, a dozen phones, and you would go, but you know, it's service. It wasn't that. And then me, it's funny thing. I was deployed for about 6 months before I told my mom I was deployed. So you can imagine that one. And it was one of those, like, I would call her and be on the phone, and of course she'd be like, "Where you at?" And I'm like, I was like, "I'm out training, bad reception." And then I don't know, I guess finally she caught on to it, and then I was like, "Well, I'm in Iraq," and she was like, "Nah." So like that was a whole nother madness, and all my friends would make fun of me, like, "So you were scared to tell your mom you was in Iraq, but you wasn't scared to go to Iraq?" And I was just like, "Oh, you haven't seen my mom. Like, that's a different battle." But right. the service was, you know, okay. It's like, and then plus I try to keep communication minimum with back home. It was more of a personal thing, like just make it easier for me. The less I talk to them, it was just, you know, get through. I wouldn't be thinking about home. It's just one of those things.
Right. Okay. Now, are there other particular incidents or impressions that stand out for you from that first tour?
On that tour, no, that was about the major parts of it. And, you know, besides the high tempo of the tour, that was pretty much the peak of it.
So then when do you rotate back to the States?
So at the end of that, I went back to Germany. I was in Germany for about 3 months. You do your whole, you know, just back to your unit. People start getting their orders to go to new units. And right around the time they start restructuring that unit to, they were going to Afghanistan, I had re-enlisted and I got stationed in Texas. So I get sent to Texas. I'm like, okay, you know, I'm in a new place. Just came back from a deployment. I'm at Fort Hood, Texas.
All right. So roughly when do you go to Fort Hood?
It was around 2010. I went October, November-ish, 2010.
All right. And what unit are you assigned to now?
And here I got assigned to Bravo Company 212 Cav.
Okay. So 2nd Battalion, 12th Cavalry, and that's 1st Cavalry Division?
1st Cavalry Division, 2nd Battalion, 12th
All right.
Cavalry.
Now, the 1st Cavalry Division has been a lot of different things in its history. It was sort of armored cavalry in World War II, it was infantry in Korea, it was air cavalry in Vietnam.
Yeah.
What was it when you joined it?
We were a cavalry unit, but the way they had it broken down, it was like all of that. Because it was a cavalry battalion, brigade, you can even say, but the battalion was comprised of, what we had? We had 2 infantry companies, 2 tank companies, and then scouts. So it was, in the form of scout, it wasn't a scout unit. It was just scout in name. So it was 1st Cav Division in historical context, because it was no longer just a cavalry. Like, they didn't even use the term Cav Scout no more. It's just a scout.
Right.
You know, so it was a kind of just a mashup of everything.
All right. So 212, was that a line company or a scout unit or what was it?
212 was the battalion.
Yeah.
Our line company, we were Bravo Company, and Alpha Company were the 2 line companies.
Okay.
And then we had 3 other companies, which were the support companies.
All right. Now, did the unit have helicopters or vehicles or?
We were mechanized.
Okay.
So we had Bradleys and Humvees, but the division had the air, you know, the helicopter division. All that was compromised under the division. But as far as our battalion was just Bradleys and Humvees.
Okay. So you're mechanized infantry again.
Correct.
Which is sort of what you had been originally. Yeah.
Right back to it. And here, the interesting was here in Fort Hood, in Germany, they kind of embraced a lot more the mechanized role. It was like, you were mechanized, but they had the light infantry stuff they did, because they did a lot of, you know, foot marches, a lot of groundwork. Same thing at Fort Hood, but Fort Hood, they were the Cav, should I say, was a lot more focused on the mechanized part. Like, we did a lot of dismounted tactics, but it was almost like they wanted to, like, we individually got our stuff. So we got, like, I was mechanized, so it was like, I got thrown into this, like, it was like a 16-week course, just a mechanized crew. We had civilian contractors come. It was like almost like a mini college semester. It was testing, learning the vehicle, operations, everything you're doing. And then once you qualify to be on that, and you gotta like pass the test and qualify, then okay, you are officially a Bradley unit. So now we got attached to the rest of the company, and now we're working with the dismount, and like the Bradley has 6 or 8 seats in the back, and we would put our light infantry guys, if you want to call them, and we would combine our operations, mechanized and dismounts. And so it was kind of like a little mashup of light infantry and mechanized without the full aspects of light infantry. Like we didn't have no airborne and other stuff like that. It was like he was in a tank, a Bradley, or the ground.
All right. And how long did you spend at Fort Hood?
I was at Fort Hood from 2010 to 2014. 2014 I got out. I got out at Fort Hood, so 2000. Okay. So.
But you had a second tour to Iraq.
Yes, and that was another thing. Like, I leave Germany, they're getting ready to deploy. I'm like, hey, I just got out of a deployment. Get to Fort Hood, I'm there 3 months, maybe probably not even 3 months. You start hearing the rumors, the rumor wheels. Hey, we might be deploying. We might be deploying. I'm just like, here we go again. And then it comes down like, yeah, we're gonna we get thrown into the training cycle. So we don't get orders yet, but you get thrown into the training cycle. And from my experience, I'm like, it's on. Like okay. And here the training tempo, and I thought Germany's training tempo was intense, but here was more because in Germany we would have to travel out to the training grounds because the base was out small, so we could maybe qualify with our rifles at the base and small tactics. But for the larger tactics, we would have to travel, and it was a couple hours drive, and then you had to maneuver a whole unit, expensive. So we would do long trainings, but not often. Fort Hood was like medium training, very often. So instead of going out for 30 days, we were going out for a week or two, come back for a weekend, 3-4 days, go out for a week or two. And that was just the tempo for the better part of the next 9 months, because I was only at Fort Hood for about just under, say 9 months before I deployed again.
Now what rank were you at this point?
At this point, I'm a specialist. And I'm a gunner on the Bradley. We're doing all our training, and I'm trying to remember when was it that I came off the Bradley. So we do all training, and then we do our major training, which is to either California or Louisiana. We go there. I'm still mechanized at this time. Everything is set up, and then we get at this time we get our orders. I remember right before we go to Louisiana. Okay, bam, your orders are cut. It's set. You have your date. We're packing bags. We're training. Now it's full-fledged operation tempo. Now we know when we're going. We get back. All of a sudden, the mission changes. It's, we're pulling out. We're giving them back the base. We're pretty much the transition phase. So it's like my first deployment was under the troop surge on the Bush. My second one was a transition under Obama, was pulling out. So it's like I got to see both ends of the beast. So I'm like, okay. In my head, I'm like, I was interested for this deployment. So I was like, I wanted to see how this one was going to go. Because they're already telling us, it was like, it's not going to be heavy operation. It was more of advise assist. We're standing back a lot this deployment. So I'm like, okay. So
now, in the middle of that, did you actually go to Louisiana?
Yes,
Okay.
we went to Louisiana. We spent 30 days. We went twice. We went 30 days. Came back for about a little bit less than a month. Went back out.
Okay, so you go to a swampy state to train to go to Iraq.
Yeah.
Well, of course, you had a little bit of swamp in Iraq first time, but okay. But was it Fort Polk or somewhere else?
Yes, Fort Polk. Okay. Fort Polk, and they have the JRTC, the Joint Readiness Training Center there, complete mock-up town of Iraq, except for Fort Polk is 1,000,000% humidity every day. And then that was our experience there. Did that for the next 2-3 months.
Okay.
Back in that cycle.
Yeah. Now you had mentioned something earlier about Fort Hood not being one of your favorite places.
No. No, it's say trying to see how to say this. Not in a way that I didn't like the military, but I didn't like Fort Hood, how the place itself was ran.
Okay.
Because I felt like it was, when I got there, I felt it was more of a corporation than an army unit. And I don't know if it was because of size, and Fort Hood does have a division headquarters on it, so okay, you need to uphold, I guess, a better image because it's a lot higher rank. I don't know the reasoning, but in Germany it felt more military. Like you were in a military unit, you did military things. Everything had like a militaristic purpose. You get to Fort Hood, some of the stuff you do, you're just like no, like it's a lot of like just weird admin stuff, you know, like it's just like random. You get there's like, oh, you have to learn how to like do a PowerPoint slide on. I'm just trying, like, one of the most random things, like a PowerPoint slide on like going out on boating and barbecuing for the weekend. I'm like, you're trying to tell me how to be safe barbecuing and boating, but you just gave me a gun and bullets and sent me to another country, and I had not a single safety brief or a PowerPoint slide of how to not to do something, you know. And it's like at Fort Hood, you're told, okay, you can't go, if you go on pass, you have to do a course on, or a computer thing on how to drive. You have to like rest every 2 hours. Weird stuff. But then we're in Iraq, they throw you in an MRAP, oh, you gotta go drive for 12 hours nonstop. I'm like, wait. So it's okay for me to do it over there when I'm in a lot more danger, but if I want to drive home for the weekend, and if it's over 3 hours, I can't do it because I don't have more than a day.
So there was a lot of chicken leap.
Yes, and for some reason, Fort Hood just felt like it was extremely good at that, and it was everything, and it kind of, it's like, man, it's like, let us be Army, like, let us do Army. It was like they were so concerned with, like, okay, you need to go to the motor pool and pick weeds out of rocks. Like, we have Roundup. Just let me go spray it. But no, it's like, go get a group of guys and go pull grass. And, like, stuff like, I'm like, I could have been teaching how to land nav or read a map or doing something else, but you want me to go clean a rock. And it wasn't that dramatic, but it was stuff like that where you're just like, why am I doing this? And again, it was just that whole, I guess, bureaucracy of the big base, and it just kind of, it just took a taste out of my mouth, and yeah.
So, going to Iraq then is a refreshing change of
Yes, it was, and I tell people that, and they look at me like I'm crazy, but I'm like, I actually looked forward to that, and okay, besides the fact that I need to stay alive, which I do that here too, that's all my only worry. Besides my Army stuff, which is almost instinctive, but it's like, if I want to drink a water or Gatorade, I don't gotta pay for it. I just go walk in the fridge and grab it. If I'm hungry, I'm not worried about my meal. I just go walk in the building and get it. Like, it's so much simpler. It's like a primitive lifestyle, you want to say, to put it the simplest words. It's like, okay, all you gotta do is worry about is eat and live, and that's it. And the stresses of war, yeah, it's a whole nother animal, but the stress of life is like not there, and it's weirdly a great feeling. And you, at the moment, I didn't notice that until like when I got out and I started, I guess you want to say, for the better part of it, being an adult, having responsibilities, paying, mortgages and all that. I'm just like, man, I was in Iraq, I just had to like not get blown up. Like,
All right. Now, what's the process for getting you out to Iraq this time?
So now, this one was a little bit different because Fort Hood has their, pretty much is like a mini country, own airport, everything. So all the staging we did in Germany last time, everything got done from Fort Hood. Loading up, all the supplies leave ahead of time, all the vehicles. It's probably like 2 months ahead of time. All the gear's gone. So now we're just sitting and waiting. Formations every other day. Bring all your gear. We want to make sure you have it. So that stuff. Finally, we're going. It's the day we're leaving. We're just get on school buses and 2 minutes down the road to the airfield, and we're sitting in this giant gym. Get loaded up in the plane, and next thing you're taking off. I think we stopped like in Ireland or something for a few hours, and then from there we went right into Kuwait. And this time it was, even in Kuwait I noticed a change, because like I get to Kuwait and a lot of those briefings, it wasn't like, hey, this is an AK-47, this is how you handle it, this is how you take it apart, you know, like, or these are IEDs. Like, it was more like, this is the population in this area, this is how you engage them, which is the right thing to do, because okay, you don't want to go in there and just, I'm gonna destroy everything. You want to know that, but it was a lot more of that than, okay, hey, you're going to a combat zone.
Right.
And then we get there. It's a huge base. The lifestyle compared to my first deployment is night and day. Like, this was it's an Iraqi air base. I'm in northern Iraq in Kirkuk at this time for this deployment. It was I think Kirkuk Air Base actually was where we were on. Really nice, a lot of contractors. This thing was like, we had, you know, for what it was, I wasn't complaining. I was like, hey, you know, I got electricity, I had internet in my room. It was good. So, hey, the living conditions was better, the food was better. By this time, contractors were well established. You know, my first deployment, from having showers that were going to electrocute you to the second deployment to you have like some guy coming and like replacing all the napkins in the bathroom. You're like, whoa, okay. So, but this deployment was the whole, let's be nice to everybody. And it's interesting because this deployment, I feel like I thought was the deployment. I was not more in fear for my life, but I was like, if this is the deployment, this is it. Because it was like probably every day almost, we were taking rockets incoming. And, you know, the first couple of days, you hear the alarm, you run to shelter. Before the end of the first week, we would get rocketed, and I'd just stay in my room. I'm like, I'm tired of running. I'm like, whatever. It's like, if it's going to hit me, it's going to hit me playing video games. And I just stay in my room. And that's a mentality a lot of us took. And I don't know if it was just the infantry guys that we took that mentality, because you still had a lot of people around us that as soon as that alarm goes off, they scatter like, you know, in the wind. Me, I'm like, I'm going to wait for first impact, judge from there, and that's it. It's like, cause I was like, I'd be damned if I run out of my room and get blown up, run into cover when I was in cover. But, you know, it was just one of those things, and then by like the third week, we're making fun of it. Like, and I don't know, it's because their rockets were just so whatever, and I'm pretty sure they probably just lined up like 5 rockets, launch and forget. But like, we would come outside and like rockets would come in, and me and my buddy would run around. The Russians are coming, everybody take cover. And then like everybody's like, how are you joking? And we're like, well, you can't be serious. It's like, I'm already stressed out. I was like, I'm not gonna go crazy worrying about some random rockets. And you know, fortunately, I don't think nobody on the base, I think somebody got shrapnel, but no casualties besides that. And it was small, like we had, but it was a constant barrage the whole deployment. Like, well over hundreds of rockets were fired at us.
Now, was this hill country you were in?
It was it's pretty flat.
Okay.
Very, really urban air setting.
Okay.
The base was huge. It was like half of it was, at this time, half was like Air Force, half was military, and Iraqis even had like a little part of it too. It was a big base, and you know, they would launch the rockets, and half the time it was hitting like random spots in the base. But we had a few times, like we had one time we're driving out and rocket landed right. It was a dud, just, and you hear the fin, and we're just like, wow. That, and you know, stuff like that. You're like, hey, but, and you know, and that was like the lifestyle there at that place.
So what were you actually doing then?
We were doing a lot of they called it we just did a lot like presence patrol. That's probably the best way. Like we would do a constant presence out there. Like we would just constant like if we would do a 48-hour guard shifts with an Iraqi unit at certain police headquarters or checkpoints throughout the town. And if we weren't doing that, we were literally just driving around the town for 12-hour shifts. You would just drive. And I think it was just drawing out the bad guys because there was a lot of rockets attack at this time. And we would, while driving out, the overall idea was to try to have a unit out of sector so when they would start launching rockets, maybe have the chance of being close. Because we could ID where they were being launched from all the stuff we had. So sometimes we would get it like, oh, we're right down the road, and you'll go, and it'd just be like rail set up. So it's like we could tell it's a timer. And my unit personally, we never got to catch one of them. But we definitely found a lot of rockets and rails, and that was just, by that time, that was their thing. Just set rockets and go. There was IEDs weren't a big thing, but it was I think they're called RKGs. They were like handheld IEDs that they would throw, and that's when my truck got blown up with. This was disappointment, and that's another thing. We weren't doing a raid. Nothing. We just got done with our presence patrol. End of our shift. No, we're actually QRF. That's the funny part. We're QRF and we're out in town.
What is QRF?
It's a quick reaction force.
Okay.
So that's for like, let's say a unit's going out and they get in contact. We're pretty much like the reserve. Hey, these guys are in contact. We're gonna come and multiply the force and whatever has to be done. The way you usually handle QRF, you want to keep them stationed at a location. Us, the way they did it, we would drive. We're out in sector, so it's like, okay, we're QRF. What happens if QRF gets hit? And guess what happened that night? QRF got hit. So we're driving. It's probably like, towards the end of our shift. We could see the base lights like maybe a mile from the base. And it's crazy. The way I remember this story was completely different from my driver. And I didn't notice till me and him talked about it a few years later. So the whole time I thought of it was like, I'm in the truck. It's my driver, my truck commander, and then me. I was a squally at the time, but I was driving in the platoon sergeant's truck, so he was the highest rank in NCO, so he was the truck commander. Him and the driver in the front seat, have the gunner in the middle standing up top, and it's me and the squad in the back. And I'm like, okay, we're pretty close to the base, and we stopped. Well, at least I thought we stopped. And next thing I know, it's just this real loud explosion, and I could still taste it, just this funky taste in the air. It's just, I don't even know how to describe it. I don't know, it's from the smoke system. It was just this weird taste, and come to realize, okay, we just got blown up. First thing I do is, the body check. I'm intact. That's a good sign. Still could not really hear stuff. Everything was just muffled. At this point, I'm putting two and two together. I knew it was an explosion. And I look over. My medic, he's standing there. Everybody, for the most part, was good. Our truck behind us, we push out of the kill zone, which is what you're trained. If you get hit, you don't want to stay in that spot. You want to try to push up, back, wherever, a couple hundred meters out of the way, in case it's an ambush. You don't want to stay on the X. We push out. Personnel gets arranged. We call up, hey, we just got hit. Oh, we need to spin up QRF. We're like, oh, we are QRF.
Okay. And we're going to pause here because this one is... Okay, and we've gotten to the point now in your story where in your second tour in Iraq, and you were basically on a truck with a quick reaction force when it got hit basically by a grenade.
Yes.
And then Okay, so what condition was the truck in when it was hit?
The truck was almost like, I give a lot of credit to the truck because this thing was, at first we was like it's immobilized, we're like it's done. The slug apparently, because it was the way this IED was, it's like a copper plate, and the explosion, what it does, it like melts that copper plate, so it's pretty much like molten metal just shooting towards wherever it's going. And where it hit in the truck was like right between the driver's seat and the engine. So it just hit the perfect sweet spot where it was the craziest thing, this big diesel engine, and it went clearly through the engine. Like, you could see the ground. So we're just like, oh, at this time we didn't know it was that bad. We're like, okay, we thought the truck, so we hook it up. Well, they hooked it up. At this time, I'm in the back of the other truck. I'm kind of dazed still a little bit. So I'm just, recovery operation is happening, to say the best. And then all of a sudden, it's like, I remember this because this got me so angry. We hear on the radio, a guy's like, okay, we got our truck, we self-recovered. They was like, we got the truck hooked up, we pretty much just put a tow bar on it to the truck in front of us. We're like, we'll just pull it out. Headquarters comes on the radio. No, the next QRF just spun up, they left, let them come and recover you. And you get that pause, like, what? Like, is that what you're, like, now you hear people on the radio, like, what the F are you talking, like, we're not going to sit here and wait for somebody to come. So, that situation developed to what it was. This whole time I'm in the back of the truck, and all I hear is, F-bombs and every other word you could imagine in the book, because we're sitting here still. And we just got blown up 500 feet to our rear, and we're still here. Eventually, we had our sister platoon happen to be coming back from their shift on guard from one of the checkpoints. They were like, we're out in sector, we're here. They pulled up, load up the truck, and literally did exactly what we were doing. But for some reason, they didn't want us doing it. We get back to the base, which is maybe 5 minutes. We go to automatically, everybody has to go to the aid station for evaluation. I get out the truck, like, oh man, I'm fine. I'm like, then all of a sudden I'm just puking my brains out, and I'm just like, okay, and everybody's being checked out, and I'm just puking. Next thing I know, it's like, oh, you're staying here overnight. I'm like, for what? I was like, I'm just throwing up. I'm cool. And so kept me overnight. Me and my platoon sergeant got kept overnight. He got rocked pretty good because he was in the driver's seat, so he got a good concussion, the blast of that concussion, because it was right in direct. If we were going 2-3 miles an hour faster, he'd probably be dead right now, because it would have gone right through that door. Right. But he was a little bit more out of it for most part of the night. Wake up the next morning, we get released. No, it wasn't nothing too crazy.
Did you get diagnosed with a concussion?
Yes, I got diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
And pretty good one, because I couldn't go out for, I forget, it was like a week or something. And I don't remember hitting my head and none of that. Like, I thought I recalled the whole thing good. Like, I'm telling my story. I'm like, yeah, this is what happened. I couldn't have been more wrong.
So what's your friend's version of it?
So my buddy, he's the driver. So I take his, I was like, okay, that kind of makes a lot more sense to me. Me, I was like, my story, I was like, we stopped at the light, whatever. He was like, no, we never stopped. He was like, we were driving the whole time. And he was like, we're driving. I saw a guy at the corner, and I yelled to the gunner. He's like, I don't want to say names because I just don't want to put nobody out there like that. And I haven't talked to them to, I let them put it out if they want to in the future, whatever. But he's saying his name, hey, 2 o'clock, got somebody's fishy there. Because he said he saw the guy look, turn back across the corner, like, we're coming up in the corner, so he like peeks. He say he seen him peek. The guy comes back, and that's when he told him, I don't know if our gunner was sleeping, la la land, what it was, because then all I hear is, oh shit. And, you know, my driver's like, I didn't know what to do after that. He's like, he's driving, he's telling the gunner, the platoon sergeant's like, oh shit. And he's like, that we got hit while we were driving. He's like, we never stopped the whole time I was driving. The part where we pushed through was right. The part that we couldn't self-recover was right, but we never, I guess we never got to the point where we were leaving with our vehicles. He said we were in the middle of setting it up, and then we got told, hey, don't self-recover. And apparently our sister platoon was like already there when we got told, you know, and I'm just like, okay, well, you know what? I was like, I knew this story completely different. Me, I thought we was at, I was like, I thought we stopped, and there's this bridge, this overpass where we drove under, and I thought that's where it happened, and it wasn't even there. It was like quarter mile up the road. He was like, I was like, didn't we stop at the light at the underpass? And that's what we got. He's like, no, we never stopped at that light. And I'm like, I know. That's what was weird to me. He was like, no. He's like, we drove through, and he's like, right when we got past the underpass at that store, there's like this little restaurant. He's like, that's where it happened. I was just like, oh. And he said, no. And it was, I was just like, that's, but it was crazy how I thought, like, if you would have asked me, like, if that's a report I gave, my debrief, I would have swore up and down that's what happened verbatim. And no, it's, and I found that very interesting, you know, like, it was like, how, I don't know if it was a coping mechanism that my body just went into, or maybe I just, that track of period, I just lost it or whatever it was, but I just found it really interesting how that my perspective was completely different from his, and it is, I just found that interesting.
Well, I mean, and with the brain injury and the concussion and things like that, stuff can happen. And,
Yeah.
and the brain can actually fabricate memories in places. If there's something that's missing, it'll fill in the space for us. So who knows there? But yeah, so very, very distinctive thing there. Okay. Was that really the only time that you kind of came under fire or were that close to it?
For that, for us, yes.
Yeah.
For that, for, yes, yes. I know that one was, but there was another story with another platoon that was pretty interesting. I say it's interesting because the outcome, nobody was hurt, but this guy, I think he was a brand new private. He wasn't in my unit, my platoon, but we had, we're going out on patrol, and we come back. It's like it was a fairly large maneuver. We come back and we're going into the base, and all you hear on the radio is, "Oh, junk! I think I got shot." You hear that? Okay, you know, you're like, everybody's buckling down. Like, we're like, is there a sniper? You know, because we're dry. You know, there wasn't no gunshot, so nobody's mind thought of anything. We're just like, what? Wait, what? So everybody, and then it's like, no, not right now. And then it's okay, so we all come out the trucks, and the kid touched his vest, and his plate was shattered. And take it off and check it, and he had a slug, dead center mass in his chest. Didn't realize it. He was a gunner on a truck. Did not realize he got shot. But the irony was, he had a plate in his vest that he was supposed to switch out for the new updated ones. He never did, so he got in trouble. So his plate saved his life. That was supposed to be changed for a plate that was supposed to save his life, and he still got in trouble. But I just thought that was like, that was kind of interesting. Like, you know, like you took a round to the chest and didn't. So I don't know if it was just that far away, but that thing right there was always like, I was like, very interesting to me. I was like, but we never. I don't think we was ever in a spot that happened. Like, I'm like, so. The real story, who knows? You know, that's my perspective, but I just always found that interesting. Like, hey, you could say you took a round to the chest and walked away.
Yeah. And I suppose you were bouncing along on the truck. might not even notice the moment when the impact
Yeah.
took place. It sort of was timed that way, and then realized that the plates shattered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Right. Now, are you now doing more in conjunction with the Iraqis?
Yes. At this deployment, it was like hand in hand. We were to the point where every time we left the base, we had to have an Iraqi contingency with us. So whether it be the local police, military, there had to be some kind of Iraqi force. Mm-hmm. And at first, we were the lead, they were following. Towards the end, they were the lead. So we pretty much were the supporting force. But that didn't always work out. There was one incident we were going on a scheduled raid. Like this was like a big maneuver planned. Mm-hmm. We show up to the Iraqi army base. They decide to not show up for work today. Like we get there, there's one Iraqi guy there. It's the chief. He's like, I don't know where my men are, and I'm just like, and company commander walks up to me, grabs me by the shoulder. He's like, me, you, the chief, and this Iraqi, we're taking point, and we're gonna go in the building. And I'm like, oh, you know, and at this point, I'm a sergeant at this point. So I was like, okay, I got the leadership role. I have to assume my leadership position. So it's me, two of my guys, two Iraqi guys, and weirdly the company commander. You never see that. A company commander does not go on a stack on the wall into a building. Sure enough, company commander was like, I'm coming in with you guys. Me as NCO at that time, I was kind of a little bit disgruntled because I felt like, you know, my power just got snatched. I was like, ugh. But then I felt good. I was like, he has trust in me that he's going to do this maneuver with me. So I was like, sweet, you know. And that one, we ended up arresting some guy. But it was very interesting because, like, our intel on that raid was pretty grim. Like, a few weeks earlier, another group had came in and got into a firefight. There was, like, a special forces group came in and got into a firefight. The same exact area. And then, like, we show up to the base and this Iraqi army guys, like, decide to call out. I'm like, oh, this, you know, the whole thing was just like, it's like, oh, man. Oh, I was like, this is going to be bad. Like, at nighttime, it's like 2 in the morning. Oh, the whole time I'm driving to this place, my heart's, like, jumping through my chest. I'm just like, oh, my God. I'm like, I want to get sick at this point. Like, I'm like, I want to be sick, but you can't, you know. But it turned out good. Went in, simple thing, got the guy. I don't even know it was the guy we were looking for, but it was a guy we wanted to arrest. Arrested him. Turned out good. Really long. Really long night. But it turned out really good because, you know, nothing happened. But that was probably one of the scariest, because, you know, it's like in your head, you're like, all the calling cards for an ambush were there. And, you know, at that time, I'm a fresh sergeant. I know, but the overall picture, you know, like, who am I? Like, I'm not gonna be like, hey, sir, we can't do this mission. He's gonna be like, yeah, go get out of my face. Go give me a new sergeant, you know. But it's like, it made you think, like, are we walking into it? It wasn't, you know, it was, we benefited, lucky, it turned out good for us in our favor. We got some great intel out of it. And it's weird because, like, I look back at a lot of this stuff, and I'm like, man, all the times that it could have been, it was like, it wasn't.
Now, did you ever see the Iraqis function effectively?
No. Just, honestly, no. One time, close, and this was because we were just sweeping a large field, and we had them on line, and they were sweeping the field. That's probably about as effective like that. But there were other units that were pretty good. Like, we got to work a little bit. We were like in Kirkuk, so we seen like the Peshmerga army and stuff like that. Those guys are legit. Those guys, they know what they're doing. There was a small groups of people that we didn't work with directly, that they were functioning right, and that was the thing with that area, especially in like that Kirkuk area, is you would have some units, you're like, these guys squared away. Like, you know, we would leave a checkpoint, don't even turn out, don't even look back, we just, adios, like, you guys got this. Another checkpoint, you show up, you're just like, wow, like, what's going on here? But we never worked with one of the better units, to say, or like all the ones we worked with, they were small, and I didn't have like. You met good people, but as far as like tactically, no. Like I seen them shoot themselves in the foot and try to say somebody shot them. Like, no, it's no. Like, you have well over 20 people here. You know, we know, like, we could tell the difference where, you know, got shot. But, like, that, I've probably seen that, like, about 3 or 4 times. Dude shoot. And they just had this thing, they would rest their AKs on their foot, the muzzle, right in their toe. And they just, like, playing with the trigger. They just always had their finger, always. And then you would think they would learn, but never. It was just like, dude, just don't play with it. Just don't play with it. And then that was a little bit of a problem, like when we would stay on the compound with them. Unless you were sleeping, we made our guys wear their full gear all the time. Like, because we slept in separate rooms, so we had a little control over the room. But like if we were just walking around the area, it's like, no, put your gear on. Like, I don't care, we're indoors. Like, these guys are too reckless. And I don't want to say it was just almost like on purpose, like, because they weren't dumb people. They just relaxed. Everything was like, like, if it happens, it was meant to happen. And when they literally say everything is like that, everything is like that. Like, nothing is, hey, we're on schedule. They're just like, it will happen when it happens. I'm like, no. So, but it was interesting. That part was really cool. But met a lot of nice people. That mentality was,
All right. Now, I mean, do you actually get to know any of these people at all?
Yes, I especially in Kirkuk, I got, when we were staying, like, we would stay overnight in the compound for a couple of days. Of course, you're gonna develop a relationship with them. And then my last name being Saladin, that intrigued them. Oh man, I think the first day they saw me and they saw my name badge that says Saladin, they were like instantly just gravitated towards me. We were talking, and it's funny because like I don't speak a lick of Arabic, and they're just, and I'm just like, I don't know. And then we had the interpreter, and like at this time our interpreters were actually locals. So he was talking, and then got talking. Like that right there built me a real good relationship with them. Like, they would like, hey, you want some of this, like, you know, bread? And like they would have their meal, and they would call me over, like, hey, we got some, you know, super nice. And I was intrigued by it, you know. Then I found out more, you know. They would tell me stuff about my last name and the origins and how he was from Kurdish, he was Kurdish, and all this stuff. They were real fascinated by it, but I kept the relationship there because we had a lot of other guys that would like go friends on Facebook and stuff like that. But I was real sketchy about that because at this time it was still like there was a lot of sketchy stuff going on over there, and a lot of the interpreters, we would have to meet them like out in the town in a way, like secluded areas. Like they wouldn't come to the base, or they would get, you know, driving in the trunk of somebody's car and get drove onto the base because they were living in that area, and if they saw them, like, oh, you're working with the Americans, you know. And it's crazy because at this time we were handing it back over to them, but compared to my first deployment, I felt like the second one was more like, I don't want to say war zone or warlike, but it was, because we had, like, it was a lot more stuff like that. Like, our interpreter, for instance, like, we're over here sneaking, like, meeting this guy in the middle of this desert practically, climbing with a full mask on, climbing into the back of our truck so we could go talk to somebody, and then dropping him off, like, miles away. It's like stuff like that, and then, you know, and then taking the rockets every night. Some of our checkpoints for other platoons got in firefights, and I'm like, when we're here to give you everything back and be nice, we're getting a lot more attacked than when we were here kicking down doors and taking you guys away. And I know it's like it was like southern Iraq and northern Iraq, two completely different places. Maybe that has something to do with it. But I just found it interesting that, like, I felt like the combat intensity was more during the drawdown than the surge.
Yeah. So Did you have much perspective in terms of thinking of the sort of bigger picture of what was happening? You know you're part of a drawdown, and do you wonder, what are these guys going to do when we're not here?
Oh yes, that was a huge thing. Like, it was just seeing how they operated already with us. It was like, man, like, honestly, we were calling it. Like, it's knowing today what we know. It's easy to say, hey, I knew this was gonna happen, but we were saying that. We were like, man, this is not gonna turn out good, because like, we're just giving these guys bases, and then like the checkpoints. We start off with the checkpoints. We've like put generators in these things, air conditioners. We upkept them good, refurbished them, and I'll come back a week or two later. They're stripped bare. Generator's gone. Air conditioner's gone. And it's like, come on, like, this is for you guys. Like, now you guys are gonna be manning this checkpoint with nothing. Like, and one of them was completely abandoned. I'm like, so I'm like, okay, this is gonna, and then we were giving them the bases too. The big bases we were shutting down. We actually were part of a big maneuver. We drove from northern Iraq all the way to southern Iraq, and like, I forgot how they described it, but it was probably like one of the largest convoy maneuvers in Iraq. Like, besides the like invasion, like it was like, it's pretty much like a whole base left at the one time, and we had all our vehicles maneuvering from northern Iraq to southern Iraq over it was like a 3-day period, and it was like, if we're drawing down and stuff is this good, like, we had fighter jet escorts, helicopters, each leg of the trip we were never unescorted by air support, and we're this massive firepower. It was well over 100 vehicles. We're armed to the T, but I'm like, so we're giving this back and stuff is so good. Why are we leaving like this? And everybody had that kind of feeling like, man, like, we're just giving this up. We're giving this up, and then, and then me seeing too, like, from my 2 deployments, and I know there's other people that have way more deployments and a more intimate experience in certain places, but I'm like, I almost feel like that work, I'm like, all that stuff is like, it's done. It's like, it's done. Like, this is the end. Is this like the fruit of my labor? Is this it? Like, blood, sweat, and tears, that we're just gonna walk away? But, that's what happened, and then, then you look on the news and you see the whole ISIS thing. Kirkuk was one of the first places that fell. I'm like, got a little sick. I'm like, I know this town. Like.
Now, when you had that convoy, so were you leaving the base that you had been on initially?
Yes.
And then, do you set up a new base, or you just leave?
No, we left the base and turned it over. We officially turned it over to the Iraqis,
right.
And then we were traveling down to other bases that we had, and then we would either grab an attachment with us and they were shut down, or there were probably still another unit there. But the main base we were on, when we left, it was, okay, this is yours.
And from there, did you just go on and leave the country?
Yeah, that was pretty much our trip home, the start of our journey home. Like, usually they would have just thrown us on airplanes and flew us to Kuwait. It was like, you got one last mission. You got to drive all the way to southern Iraq, because we had we were turning in the vehicles to the main logistic port or whatever, and it's a lot cheaper to have a bunch of people drive it than it is to fly them down. So, and that itself was an interesting trip, because we got to drive through a lot of towns in Iraq. Like, we drove through what's Saddam's hometown?
Tikrit.
Yes, and the path we took, you see everything, and I was sitting up front. I got to see all that. Some of the stuff, you're just like, man, it's mesmerizing. You're like, wow, like these buildings, and like, even when you see like the palaces and you go, like, it's just, man. But then you like, so like, destroyed.
So were the palaces impressive big things?
Yes, like, to me, like, they definitely impressed me. Like, I got to see 2 of them. I didn't get to go inside none of them. But it's just driving by and seeing them, and then like, just like a lot of them, like, I was looking at it a lot like a historical view, like, perspective. I'm like, man, thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
This was a whole.
Yeah. You were in Assyria.
Yes, yeah, and actually, when I was in southern Iraq, it's called the Arch of Kesra, the gateway to Persia, whatever. My base was right there. Like, we were tasked with keeping that place, whatever was left of those ruins, up. But that amazed me. You know, they were like, this is considered the cradle of civilization. Like, this was, they called it the gateway to Persia, and it was like, you know, this is like the old, like, historical, like, and it was amazing. Like, I was just like, man, like, this thing is, it's older than this country that's here protecting it. Like, this, and like, I got to go to one of the shrines for one of, it was like, I think one of Muhammad's prophets or something. I forget who it was, but it was like a really religious, super religious. And then, I didn't know, like, I don't know a lot about it, but it's just being, like, in the presence of that and understanding the historical value of it. You're like, man, like this could have been where stuff started, you know, like, all this kind of stuff is, like, if you really look at it, it all kind of started right there.
All right. I think we're going to stop at this point, since you need to move. Okay. Now, we've gotten in your story to a point where you were kind of closing out your second tour, and you mentioned certain significant things that happened. Think back about what we covered before. Is there other things that stand out, or particular experiences or impressions you had that you haven't brought in yet?
From the last deployment,
Yeah.
I would say, like, significant events, like, impactful events, most likely not. That was, like, the major we covered. Everything else was more, you know, just the day-to-day operations. My son was born during my second deployment. That, I can't believe I missed that out, but that was huge.
How do you deal with that? I mean, are you able to communicate with home and through the process, or
Well,
or do you get to go home somewhere in there?
yeah, I don't know if it was set up or just a fortunate of events just managed to work their way like this, but you get your R&R during deployment, and my R&R came up like exactly at the 9 months. So I was like, okay, I might be home to see my son born, or, you know, or he might be born and then I'll get home. So that's what I'm telling. I was like, I might have a good chance here. So I'm like, all right, I'm excited about that, and I get leave to go. Like, it was like 2 days worth of flying, just long, you know, just get off the plane. I'm like, okay, we're gonna get something to eat. Shift. Son hasn't been born yet, so we go get something to eat. Get something to eat. We go to the house and literally right back in the car because she went into labor. So it was like perfect timing. Let's go. So it was a 2 week R&R. My whole first week, well, 5 or 6 days, it was spent in the hospital. Then got done with that. Got to spend the next week with my son, so I got to, and that was like awesome, you know. But on the other hand, my whole perspective just changed. It was like, okay, I'm going back, but now I'm like, everything I do, I'm like, I don't want to say second guessing, but I definitely was more cautious. Like, I wasn't, as opposed, like, just like, all right, let's go do this. Like, now in the back of my head, I was like, okay, let me just not methodically. I was always a little methodically on planning, but this time I was like, I guess just being more redundant. It's weird to say, like, because you're being careful already because where I'm at in the environment, but it kind of like increased a little. Like, I don't know, like, it was like I wasn't all about myself, but like this kind of just brought it out more where it's not just about me, I guess you could say. Like, I was like, okay, I gotta make it back home. As before, I was like, I would like to make it back home. This time I was like, I have to.
That's sort of a reason why at times different military organizations wanted single men for certain kinds of jobs and things like that.
I definitely see why that would be.
Now you've got different set of responsibilities there at that point. Now, and so how far into that tour was that?
And it was that's like right at the middle. It was I want to say probably just past 6. Either at 6 months or just past, like right in that middle point. Not sure exactly.
All right. Now, a different kind of question. How would you characterize the morale in your unit on the second tour with the 1st Cavalry as opposed to your previous one?
I would say the second tour, the morale it was like, as far as like cohesiveness morale, like we all got along, we were all really good. That was great. Like, like our platoon, we were great bunch of guys. I was like, that was my first like significant leadership role in combat, because before I was just a team leader. This time I had the role of a platoon sergeant for a few weeks because I was a senior staff sergeant. Just, no, not staff sergeant. I was a senior sergeant.
In the platoon.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
So we had a platoon sergeant was going, so I had to fill in that seat. So I did that for a little bit. So I got a lot of good experience. And in that manner, it was like the soldiers were good. A lot of young guys. They were, just fresh, full of energy, ready to go. But this was a different. Their perspective, I guess what they thought they were gonna go. Like they were like, oh yeah, we're going to war. I don't know if they were like, okay, we're gonna go get into this shooting war. Like they expecting like intense firefights or what it was. But I'm like, and I told them, I was like, even my first deployment where that was what's going on in a lot of parts of Iraq, that like for us, like we didn't see it as much as you would think, even though we had some catastrophic events. It's like you didn't. I was like, it's not like that in other places. I'm pretty sure many other soldiers experienced that. I'm like, from my experience, I'm like, it's not like that, And if they do happen, matter a couple minutes, is done. It's not this, like, you're going to 3-day firefight. Like, it just wasn't happening at that time. So I think that kind of took away from them a little bit, because they kind of felt, I don't want to say shortchanged on the deployment, but as an infantryman, you're naturally looking for that. You joined to be combat, to go fight. Like, that's what you want. And it's like, you're letting them loose, like, hey, go, but there's nothing there. It's just this constant defensive posture. And then you're like, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? And I think that was one of the hardest challenges, was being able to keep that morale up with those guys, because all we were doing was just, driving around in circles pretty much.
But there were still people trying to kill you.
Yes.
But it was IEDs, it was rockets.
Exactly. But, I understood that. I was like, but them, they were like, nobody's shooting, we're not shooting. I'm like, okay, but you don't need to be shot. I'm like, I'd rather get shot than blown up. I was like, you could fight back a bullet. I was like, you ain't fighting a bomb. So it's like, but they didn't see that perspective. They wanted to come and hunt the bad guy. Kick that. We were kicking down doors, but it's like, it wasn't the movie scenes, I guess you could say. It wasn't that. And they were a little bit bummed about that, but they were still great group of guys. Everybody was always happy. Like, I never had an issue with worrying about, like, okay, is this guy going to do something he shouldn't do? I never had to deal with that. Everybody was great people. It's, and the environment was better too, like the quality of living. So I guess that improved. That helped a lot, as opposed if we were stuck in some horrible little box with nothing, then maybe a different story. But yeah, quality of living was pretty good there too.
All right. Now, how much time do you have left on your enlistment when you head back home?
So I head back home, I was about 4 years I had. Probably like 3 or 4 years when I came back. So I was probably finishing the better part, 3 years left in my... Because I know I was in my window, I think, like in the next year or so, where I could re-enlist. So I think I was like the 3-year mark. Because it's funny that question came up, because that kind of rolls into the next, I guess I call it my next event in the military. We come back, now we're just resetting, doing normal stuff, just qualifying with weapons. Like, nothing intense or crazy. Just almost like just your basic stuff. And then
Are you back at Fort Hood?
Yes. We came back to Fort Hood at this time. We getting all the new guys, because usually when you come back from a deployment, units get reshuffled, people leave. I stay at this unit. We get a whole group of new guys in, slowly building up to start getting to a deployable force again. But that's still like, we're not on those calendars, so we got a good stretch of downtime. I get orders. And it's my first sergeant comes walking down the hallway. He's just, all I hear is Saladin. And I turn around and I'm like, great. He has a piece of paper in his hand. I'm like, what's going on? Like, that's any soldier. You hear your name and somebody higher ranking than you with a piece of paper in his hand coming at you. You're like, you never think of nothing good. Automatically, like, wait, what's going on? I didn't do nothing. So I'm like, he's like, I got a surprise for you. And he has this smirk on his face. And I'm like, great. I probably got some dumb detail I gotta do now. He's like, I got you orders. So I'm like, orders? So I'm like, oh, am I going to a new unit? I'm like, interesting. So I'm thinking, he's like, you're gonna be a recruiter. And I was like, oh. So, yeah, and then he starts laughing, and I didn't want to be a recruiter. It just wasn't my thing. But, you know, got my orders. Complete the mission. It's Charlie Mike, okay?
Okay. Now, how do they turn you into a recruiter?
So that's the next awesome part of it. So you have to go to a school. So you do a bunch of stuff, do a bunch of paperwork, get all your stuff ready. They ship you off. And the school it's this one, there's probably more or not, but the one I went to was in South Carolina. It's a bunch of like a mixture of different schools and basic trainees, a bunch of different schools on that base.
Were you at Fort Jackson or somewhere else?
Yes, it was Fort Jackson. Was it? Yes.
That's the big army
Yes,
base.
yes,
in
Fort
South
Jackson.
Carolina.
It was Fort Jackson. So I remember I had to walk the first day, and it was far. So, get there, get to the airport. I'm in Fort Jackson. I get dropped off at my sleeping, and they're like, okay, the school is down this road. Be there 7 o'clock in the morning. Okay. Get up 7 o'clock. I get up early. I was like, I don't know nobody. First day here, so I just start walking down the road. I'm like, where's this school? It's pretty early in the morning. You know, I gave myself enough time, but it was a long walk. It was a few miles. I'm not sure. I finally get there, and I'm like, okay, I'm here at the school. I'm doing everything I have to do, and I don't want to be here. Like, you know, I'm not hiding the feeling. You know, like, well, I'm not showing it to other people, but everybody that knew me knew I didn't want to be there. So get there first day, meet friends, meet a bunch of people, start doing classes. About 3 days in, I think it's a month-long class too. I don't remember, but like 3 days in, they come in and go. Everybody has to go and do a one-on-one sit down with a civilian doctor. Okay, I get called up. It's my turn to go. I sit there. We talk for about like 2 hours, just asking me all these questions, you know, and all of a sudden we're done. We leave. Okay, go back to class, do everything I'm doing. And I actually had to re-enlist to be able to go to recruiter school. I forgot to mention this because my window, I was at 2 years, and you needed 3 years to be able to go to recruiter school because you had to do a 3-year commitment. So me, I was like, I could have taken an opportunity and just got out of recruiter school. I was like, no, do the right thing. I re-enlisted.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm going to do it. In my mind, even though at this time in my mind, I was still thinking I was going to be a lifer. I was going to do my 20-plus years in the military. So, okay, I re-enlist, get everything done. Show up to class the next morning. I got a yellow slip on my desk. Go see such and such. Okay. Go downstairs. You're disqualified from recruiter school. So part of me is relieved. I'm like, yes, I get to go back. But part of me is like, wait, what? What's going on? I'm like, I was doing good in all my tests. I'm like, every test I took, I passed. Everything, I'm getting along. Everything's good. Like, there's no strikes against me. It's like, yeah, this doctor said you can't be a recruiter. I'm like, why? They were like, oh, from your interview results, it says you're not fit to be a recruiter. It's like, I don't know. I was like, what are you trying to say? Like, am I crazy? Like, what's going on? But that was the most of any information I got. Then they just call your unit, get a plane ticket, you're out of here tomorrow morning or whatever it is. I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, part of me is still upset, but I don't know why. I'm like, I didn't want to be here to begin with. I'm like, but this person has no clue about anything I just did, what I've done, what I'm going through, and I can't be a recruiter. I'm like, who else would you want to be a recruiter? Like, I'm doing everything that you're recruiting people to come do. Like, so I'm like, you know, whatever. I ate it with a grain of salt in the back of my head. Now I'm like, I just re-enlisted. So I'm angry. I get back to Fort Hood. We're in a training cycle, so I go straight to the field. So I'm doing that training, boom, boom, boom. Then all of a sudden, I have to go see some doctors. Doctors are like, hey, and I guess I was referred to go see a doctor earlier. I don't know if I blew it off or if I just forgot. I say I forgot. They say I ignored them. So I had to go, and then that kind of started my process of of me getting out. That's what I call it at that point. That was my turning point. Because I started seeing, like, I don't want to say, it was almost like, oh, you should get out. But it was like, they almost make you to the point where it's like that. Because it's like, you know, you get limited to what you could do. They're like, oh, you can't go out and do this no more. Like, you're not allowed to do this no more. And then it's like, okay, so I can't go train. I got to stay here. And so now I'm like, because these doctors want to keep evaluating me and talking to me and all this stuff. Whatever. I'm doing everything they want to do, but I'm still training at the same time. Then finally, it just got to the point where I had a lot of like physical stuff I was trying to deal with, and that was just another headache on top of itself because they really wasn't. It was more like, you know, like my shoulder, for instance. I'm like, hey, this hurts. It was like, all right, let's go do this. It was almost like just keep putting Band-Aids on it. And I guess you could say I got tired of it, which I think that part was the worst. Because I was like, I didn't want to do it no more. I was just like, it's not it wasn't what I wanted. I wasn't doing my stuff. And then at this time, the military itself was taking an interesting turn as opposed to when I first came in. It was starting to be operated a lot more like a public corporation business as opposed to an army. Mm-hmm. Like, you're training people to kill, but you want me to not discipline them when they do something wrong. So it was getting interesting. Like, you know, like when I was a brand new private, I messed up, I was going to sweat. Like, you were going to learn. You was either going to be strong or smart in the military. And that's the way it was, especially in the infantry. Like, okay, your sole purpose of joining is to fight. But it's crazy. You have like, okay, you can't make them do more than 5 push-ups no more. So me as an NCO, as a leader, I got guys in there, and there are right ways to train it, right way to correct people and all that. But like, your power was like getting so limited. It was getting to the point like I felt personally, I don't know how everybody else felt, but personally it was like the brand new privates were having more power than the NCOs. Like, it was almost to the point like, if you made a brand new private feel uncomfortable, you could get in trouble. They would report you to such and such IG or whatever, whoever you want, whatever they were, and next thing you know, you have an investigation on you because you're supposedly, you know, mistreating soldiers because you're making them stay late, because you're making them mop the floors, because you're making them do army stuff. But apparently army stuff is not good no more. So that was like, I was like, I can't do this no more. I couldn't. I was like, I was done with all the medical stuff too, piling on top of me. And then you have these doctors telling me, oh, you know, you should take all these medications. And I'm like, and me, I felt perfectly fine. Nobody around me thought I was issues. Like, I was still training with my guys, leading them, and effective. So I was like, I was going through the ranks pretty fast. Like, I made staff sergeant in 5 years. So, and I actually received my staff sergeant before I received my first evaluation as a regular sergeant. So I think I was doing pretty good. Mm-hmm. And then just to get these civilian doctors tell me that they think I'm not mentally capable or physically or whatever they want to say of doing the job, that I think that was my turning point, because when that happened, I was just like, I'm done.
Okay. Now, these civilian doctors, did you have a sense of whether they were psychiatrists or just regular doctors? Or?
It was a mix. I was seeing a little bit of both. I was seeing a psychiatrist, and I was seeing regular doctors for physical stuff and stuff. Mm-hmm. And like the physical stuff, I would say, okay, some of it was a concern, but I still wasn't being limited on my performance, I would say, at the time. Right. Like, I don't know if it was just what was going on.
And do you know where the shoulder injury came from?
That is I have no one event. Like, it could be like a accumulation of events or something, mm-hmm. But it's interesting because like the doctor who looked at it, he tells me it's like one of the top 10 worst cases he's ever seen. And I'm like, well, I've been living with that for so many years. And it was in the military, but that was one of those things too. Like, I was so focused on just doing my job and what I had to do that all that stuff was secondary. Like, I get up, my shoulder, arms going numb on me, but I'm like, no, I have to go to work and make sure my soldiers are there and make sure they're taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I think years of just throwing that on top of each other left me to where I'm at now. But at that time, I wasn't thinking like that. At that time, I was like, you know, I'm a robot. I can do this.
But you didn't notice any one specific injury that happened. It's just that over time it accumulates, and whatever it was got worse.
Yeah.
And you weren't complaining about it, and so
No.
it wasn't getting treated.
Well, I sometimes it got to a point where it was getting bad, and I started complaining about
Mm-hmm.
it, but I didn't want to take it to the point where it would remove me from the unit. Because, like, honestly, if it got to the point, like, if I keep complaining, then it would be like, okay, so obviously you can't do this, so guess what? You're not going to go train, you're not going to do. And I didn't want to do that at the time. I still wanted to be with the guys and training. So I would have complained to tell them, like, hey, I got something wrong with my shoulder. Could we look at it? And that's it. It wasn't like every day I'm like, hey, my shoulder, my shoulder. I was just like, I'd bring it up. Okay, yeah. And then, or I would go in and be like, here, just take a couple Motrins and
Mm-hmm.
some water. Keep it moving.
Yeah, yeah. Now, did the psychiatrists think you had a traumatic brain injury?
I did have a traumatic brain injury. They were saying they thought I had PTSD and I forget what they said, not reintegrating.
Mm-hmm.
They said I was having issues reintegrating, but I'm like, you spend a year in a country where everybody's trying to kill you. It's gonna take you a little bit of time to adjust when you get back. You know, it's like I'm laying in my bed at night, alone apartment. I hear a loud noise. For the last couple months, I'm reacting. Of course, I'm gonna get up and react, and that's my thing. Like, I understand there's people who do have those issues, but like I felt I had it under control because I recognized it from the beginning. Like, okay, like I notice I'm extra attentive. I noticed like I'm triple checking my windows and doors. Like I noticed everything I was doing. It wasn't like people would tell me like, hey, you're acting different. It was like I was intentionally doing it, and I knew what I was like controlling what I was purposely doing it, I guess to say. But I guess that wasn't the way I should have been acting when I came back.
Yeah. Well, it looks like, especially were you telling any of this to the doctors, the psychiatrists?
When they would ask me, I would tell them, like, because I'm the type of person, I didn't see it as an issue, so I was like, I'm not going to hide it or hold back. I was like, I'm going to tell you straight up how I'm feeling. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, nothing's going on. And then, you know, like, if I had something wrong, I'm like, hey, am I extra aware right now? Yes, I am, but I knew why.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was because, okay, I just spent 12 months getting blown up and random rockets falling around me at 3 in the morning almost 5 times a week. Like, yeah, I think anybody would be a little jittery. But
at that point, then they're checking off boxes. And I expect that in the Army, any box ever checked off just follows you.
yes.
And so these can accumulate. And they go, oh, okay, so he's damaged goods, so we'll move him out or something like that.
And honestly, that's how I felt. Like, it got to that point where I was just like, I'm just, you know. And it's funny because when I was in, I kind of saw that with soldiers prior, got hurt, whatever, and you would see them as time would go on, you would know, you're like, okay, he's about to get out. Because you could kind of like just see the change in the person and everything. Mm-hmm. And then like when you're on that side, you're like, man, like it hurt. It was one of those few moments that I said it hurt, and I was just like, man, I'm actually, like, when I realized it's coming to an end, I was like, okay, and then you know, and then you start seeing it, and you're like, well, I'm not part of this. They start going out, you know, and it's like.
Okay. Now, do they allow you to end your enlistment early, or what happens to you?
No, well, that it depends how it falls, cause like if you get cause the way I got out, they medically retired me, so they do the process, and that could take 6 months, a year, 2-3 years. It all depends on how fast the Army's moving, how much paper you have, whatever random unicorn reason that Army has, that they take some thousands of years. But mine was, it probably took the better part of a year and a half to do everything, but you get the notice. Like, I had an appointment with one of the doctors. I go there, he gives me this piece of paper. He's like, we're starting your separation as of today. And then I'm like, ugh. You know, it's like, okay, at that point, I'm not gonna say I was completely against it, but part of me was upset because like I was like, okay, it's coming to an end, but then I was also like, whatever, like it was my faith. It meant to happen at that point. I was just like, whatever. So, and then that's where I was at there, and it's just like, okay, and then this time the unit's kind of picking back up because they got they didn't come to orders yet, but I guess they were coming down on orders because you started noticing all the restructuring and starting to put together teams and everything. And me, I'm trying to get in there so bad.
Mhm.
I'm trying. I'm talking to everybody I can. I'm like, there's nothing you could do. I'm like, come on. I was like, just let me deploy. I was like, when I come back from this deployment, I'll get out. I'll listen to whatever doctor wants to tell. I was like, let me just do this one deployment. And I don't know why I wanted to do it so bad. Like, and in my head, I'm like, you're about to get out. But in my voice, I'm like, I want to go. So, of course, I didn't go. They didn't take me. I got stuck in the office. They made me the supply NCO.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to sit in the supply room for a few months and just twiddle my thumbs and check the boxes off, hey, okay, blah, blah, blah. Go to this appointment, go to this meeting, do what you got to do. And it's pretty much it. It was almost like a slow Band-Aid.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just...
Okay. Now, when you come back from a deployment, do they make any effort to sort of help you reintegrate?
Yes, they have a 30-day reintegration period. My first deployment, I swear, is a little bit longer. Well, no, my first deployment was 30 days. I think my second one was a little bit shorter, or it might have been 30 days. But they do have it. You gotta go to classes. Like, I know my first deployment, I know that one a little better. And I don't know if it was because we were overseas they did it like this, but we weren't even allowed to leave the base.
Mm-hmm.
Like, curfews set in. Like, you can't leave. You have to be at work. Like, I think the first 3 days you weren't allowed to drink. The rules come down. Like, it's just, you're locked in. But then as time went on, we were allowed more stuff. In Fort Hood, when we came back, it was like a Friday, and it was like, okay, 4-day weekends. You guys... Tuesday, Monday, whatever the following work day was. But then when we came back, it was classes, orientation, just...
Did any of that stuff do any good?
Oh, man. Personally, physically, I would say I saw, for like your physical health, I saw a purpose. Because they did all that too.
Mm-hmm.
And there they'll get a little bit more stuff. But as far as like hey, okay, you're back here, like social. No, it was more like, okay, welcome back to the army, blah blah blah. Don't go out, don't drink and drive. Like it wasn't. It's not like what I guess somebody would think. Like, okay, reintegration, they must be like doing all this crazy scientific stuff. No, it was just like a lot of just sit down paperwork, talk to doctors.
Yeah, I guess I would expect something along the lines of just talking to you, reminding you of the differences between the civilian world and the military one, which kinds of reactions and responses or things you might have are going to be normal and what you have to watch out for or adjust.
You would think, but no, and if they did, I don't remember, but I remember a lot of it, and I don't remember that part, like, them saying, hey, like, they do tell you, like, I'm trying to think if there's anything like that, or something that was close to that. It was more probably like, this is probably more me, because I got a lot of extra classes, I guess, for my stuff. They were like, to teach you, like, they call it self-induced stress or real stress. Like, okay, they're like, okay, you're actually tensing up yourself. The situation's not tense. That was like, but that was, I think not everybody got that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of it is they're talking to you about some of the kind of the PTSD types of symptoms and things, and here's what to watch out for, and here are coping strategies. Or
That, honestly, no.
Okay.
And you would think, especially at that time, with everything that's going on, they would have focused on that a lot more. But that was something like, if you had a legit issue going on and then they took you, so you would get singled out and brought to a doctor and then probably dealt with like that. But as a mass,
Okay.
Maybe now, but they didn't have that then.
All right. Okay. So when do you actually get out then?
So it was 2014. I don't remember the month. It was summertime sometime.
Okay.
I was in Texas and it was hot. I get out. I took about, say, 3 to 5 months. Just did nothing. I was like, I'm not.
Where did you go?
I stayed in Texas.
Okay.
But I was like, I'm not. I went back to Jersey. I took a little road trip. I drove from Texas to New Jersey. Just me, my son, and the dog. Just traveled. Just pretty much saw family. I just didn't want to do nothing. I was like, I just don't want no. I can't say no responsibilities, but I was like, I want to be able to wake up and not be having a timeline or schedule. Like, I want to get away from all schedules possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then did that. After a couple months, I think it was like 3-4 months, I went to school because I got bored.
Okay.
I was so bored. I was like, okay, this is fun. I was like, I need to do something.
All right. And did you have money saved up from being in the Army?
I had a little bit of money saved up from being in at this time. I was with my wife now. We were together. She was way more financially conscious than me. So like, she was in the military too. When we met, I was that guy, like, okay, I got paid. No, tomorrow I wake up, I'm broke.
Mm-hmm.
But she reined that in fast. So when I got out, we were pretty, we were okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then since I got the med board and all that stuff, I was still getting paid. And then I went to school, so I started bringing some income in like that.
Okay. And where did you go to school?
Initially I went to Austin Community College, and I got an associate's degree in automotive technology.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to work on cars. I
Right.
love cars, which is crazy because my initial entry, I was going to be a teacher, and I was like, no, I want to go work on cars. And I went into the field. I was actually working at this pretty nice shop in Texas, super high-end shop, working with these cool cars, but my back and my shoulder catch up to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like probably like 6 months in, I'm just like, okay, I'm hurting, I'm like, I couldn't see myself doing this and supplying for my family. And at this time, my daughter was born, had a newborn at this time too. So it was just like, yeah, this is not going to work. I could probably do this job for another 2 years and I'm not going to be effective anymore. So I went back to school.
Okay.
And, well, actually we moved to Michigan, and then I
All right.
went back to
So
school.
how did you wind up in Michigan?
My wife's from Michigan.
Aha.
Yes, I call it Southern Canada because it's so cold.
Mm-hmm.
But I gave in. I fought the good fight. We were in Texas for a while, but then she kind of hit me with reality. My son at the time was living in Indiana with his mom. She was from Michigan. My family was from New Jersey. We had nothing in Texas besides Army friends who themselves were stationing somewhere else and leaving or getting out and going. So finally, it's like, okay, I'm planning on going back to school. Let's just make the move now. Just in time for Michigan winter. It was like November of last year. 2 years been here now. Just in time, so I went from my Texas beautiful winters to real winters again.
Oh, come on, it gets cold in New Jersey sometimes.
Oh yes, but Texas kind of babied me. Like I would go there, probably have winter for what, a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, I'll be barbecuing for Christmas. But I came back here, then I was like, oh yeah, this is what winter feels like. But it's, it's good. It's good. I like it.
All right. Now, if you I sort of look back a little bit on the whole thing, in the end, what do you think you took out of being in the Army?
Oh man, I took out so much. I would do it all over again. I say I wouldn't change nothing as far as my experience and everything. Maybe a career choice or a school or something like that I would change, but I have no regrets.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe push myself a little harder in some things. Maybe, who knows what could have happened, but it's always easier to say who knows than at that moment. But I would do it all over. It definitely, I was pretty all over the place before I joined. I wasn't, I wasn't thinking of next month. I was whatever. I got an Army showed me to grow up. I responsibility. It definitely showed me how to handle stuff. Like I definitely learned that, and the best way I could put it is be a leader. But I'd say like the qualities, like being able to like listen to people, being able to talk to people, being able to see things from a completely different perspective. Like as one time, you know, like before I joined, I would see something, I'm instantly like, boom, make up my mind. I'm like, oh, you know, like that's a chair and that's it. You couldn't change me. Now I'm like, well, that's a chair. I could also use it as a stool. It could also be a fortified spot if need be. You know, like now I'm analyzing everything, which I look at it as a plus, a good thing, because like I use it with my kids and everything in life in general. And I'm overall, I would say one of the personally the best things I took out of it was I'm at peace with myself, and I'm so much more accepting of everything. It's a weird way, but it's just like stuff that used to drive me nuts before. I'm just like, well, I can't do nothing about it, no matter how I'm angry, whatever I get to try to do is like, it's not going to change. It happened. Let's think about how to fix it if I don't like it, or how to make it better, or just get away. Like, and it just like that, like it just took like everything now was like that for me. Like in life, it's like everything is way more like even school. Like I went back to school, like I joined the army to say get away to college from college is what I say, and I'm back here, but like I see the difference of how I was in school then and now, and I'm just like, wow. Like if I had this brain back in 2004, 5, who knows the possibilities.
Right. This tape is just about done, so we're kind of go close out here before we cut you off in that sense. But thank you very much for taking the time to share the story today.
Yes, thank you for letting me.